think we're live right now.
Yeah!
What's up, folks? Welcome to the Real Talk Tap Talks. My name is Nico Rubio of Shuffle Life Productions, and today we have one of the best tap dancers who's ever done it. You've seen her on stages all around the country and the world, everywhere from her hometown of Los Angeles to touring with Postmodern Jukebox to performing with Jason Samuel Smith's ACGI and all kinds of things. So make some, give a round of applause at home for Miss Sarah Reich, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Nico. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Yeah, folks. So we're doing this different. This is the first time we're YouTube live with somebody in person. So please let us know in the comments if the sound is questionable or anything like that. I know it's super professional, right? But we're going to just dive on in and get to it. So, yeah. Acting all professional.
I know. Well, the funny thing, y'all, is I don't know if any of you know out there, but Nico and I are best friends and have been for many, many years. We met back in 2004, right?
Mm-hmm.
The LA Tap Fest.
Yeah.
He was with Mad Rhythms at the time, and that's the first time I think I've ever heard of Mad Rhythms. And then the following summer we reconnected at St. Louis Tap Fest 2005, and I remember seeing you in the elevator with Star Dixon and J-Bo and other cats from Mad Rhythms, and that was really awesome. And that's how I really connected with the Chicago family of Mad Rhythms, and that has really been a rock in our tap lives, is us, our friendship and our passion for tap dance, being so young as teenagers all the way till now as professionals.
For sure. Yeah. So it's super dope in this time to be able to see this woman that I just talk to all the time on the phone. But
I know. Yeah. I was thinking that today. I'm like, I wonder what I'd be doing if I were home in LA. Probably calling Nico.
Right. Yeah. So I obviously, given that, know Sarah very well, but I'm going to act as if I don't know you at all.
Oh,
so
snap.
If you can just start with, what got you into tap dancing and, just like your origin story.
Well, origin story, it starts at 5 years old. That's when I started dancing, tap, ballet, and jazz. But I'm going to just jump right into, when I got into tap culture, because that didn't happen till later when I met Mr. Kennedy, Paul Kennedy. Shout out to Paul and Arlene Kennedy, some of the greatest tap dance teachers of all time. Mr. Kennedy was all about the traditional style of tap, the old school stuff. So it was all about, wearing tuxedos and performing with class and elegance and showmanship and tapping to Count Basie and Duke Ellington, some of the great big bands of the time. So I immediately fell in love with the era of the 30s and 40s, which I think is important, right? For tap dancers who love tap dance, you kind of have to love that era.
Right.
And I didn't know much about footage or history, of legendary tap dancers yet, but he did have pictures of them all over the walls in the lobby. And so I would see pictures of Bill Robinson and, Jimmy Slide and Honey Coles and Bunny Briggs, and they would have their names on them. So I'm like, okay, so there's somebody out there named Bunny Briggs who eventually I'll learn about or something. And I remember Mr. Kennedy was the first to show me a clip of Peg Leg Bates. And that was cool. I was like, oh, this is cool. I was like, wow, I was already just blown away by Peg Leg. But then just the concept of seeing an old clip was like, that's cool. Yeah. And then it wasn't until after he passed away, Jason Samuel Smith moved to Los Angeles from New York. And then him being a crazy, history head and in love with the art form of it and the videos, he put me on to all of those clips and footage. And we'd have this tap jam every Monday night at Debbie Allen's studio. And sometimes we'd end early and we'd go over into the office and he would pull out tapes and we'd watch footage. He had these tapes on VHS tapes. And so seeing him being very excited about tap history and scatting along to all the rhythms and stuff, that's when I fell in love with it too, because I would just watch him watch the clip and he'd be scatting everything and knowing all the lines, knowing the next step that was coming up, the splits, I'm like, wow, I loved how much he loved watching footage. And then it kind of gave me permission to then really explore my love for it as well. So I'll kind of stop there as far as getting into the culture of it, because I've tap danced most of my life, but it's just like the culture of it. That's the initiation of like being around it. But then also meeting you was like a big part of this culture of like finding people around my age who are also as passionate as I am about tap. I didn't know that there were other people,
Right.
but I'm like, I'm just in LA, so I find you. I'm like, oh my God, they're passionate in Chicago. Logan Miller in St. Louis. Danny Nielsen in Canada. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I don't want to like stay on this for too long, but I think that it would be really cool for those who don't know. You spoke a little bit about Paul Kennedy and the Kennedys, but I think it would be interesting for folks to know that not only did you get time with him with the company like everyone else, but you got private lessons like from a VHS tape we watched the other day.
Yeah,
that was crazy to
see.
Itty bitty Sarah.
Yikes.
Next to Paul Kennedy.
So big.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, I guess what I should ask is, what was that time like? Now that you've seen that, and what was it like watching that old? Private lesson.
Yeah, so my father, who was more of the tap dad, schlepping me around to tap classes. The studio I was at before I joined the Kennedys was with Sid Glover at Hawthorne Dance Academy. Now, Sid Glover was a student of Paul Kennedy already, so I already had like a prerequisite of the Kennedy tap style of strong arms, clean taps, relaxed shuffles, all this stuff. So by the time I got to Mr. Kennedy, I kind of already knew his language, but I still needed a lot of work. I was 10 years old. So my father decided I should take private lessons with him, or Mr. Kennedy probably suggested it, too, before I were to ever join the tap company.
Right.
So what we were watching the other night was footage of one of my private lessons with him. My dad videoed every one of them. And it's so interesting to see him schooling me, because it's like things, when you're so young, you forget these things, right? I knew I had privates with him. I remember the smell of the room. I remember the smell of the fried chicken. Because the Kennedy School was across the street from Pioneer Chicken. Mm-hmm. So I remember the smell of fried chicken. And I remember the sound of his voice. I remember his intention with me. Do I remember everything he said? No, I do not. So to watch that again, I'm like, dang, that's how I teach now. So it's so just fascinating too, that like maybe if I don't remember specifics, I do remember things of like how a teacher would talk to me and kind of get on my butt.
Right.
And he was a stickler for that. He was a perfectionist. And he was showing me in the video, like, was that clean? He would ask me, I'm like, no. He's like, well, then do it. He's like, did you practice? I said, I was just kind of quiet. I was very shy. And he was like, I know you didn't practice. He's like, I can tell you didn't practice. And he's like, I can tell. And it just was like so cool to see him just be up on my butt, like, clean it up, do it again. No, you missed a sound, do it again. You missed a sound, do it again. And that's how he was with all his students. That's why some of his students are some of the best, because we've had that crazy drilling. And now we also then, in return, even with him not being in our lives so much, we have to do that for ourselves and hold ourselves accountable. So, yeah, Mr. Kennedy, incredible man, incredible teacher. I miss him every day. All of his students have a very big place in our hearts for him and his sister Arlene. Just some of the greatest tap teachers, they inspire us so much. So yeah, it was just really cool to see that.
Yeah, and that's stuck with you, like all of what he taught you, not just with your feet, but with your presentation and all of that.
Yeah, he was saying, you're so small, Sarah. He's like, so that means you have to be good, because you're going to be in the front. He's like, so, I can't have you in the front of my line dancing like this. He put his arms out all like lame. And then he goes, I need you like this. His hands all big and smiling, chin up. I'm like, okay. And I just see my little 10-year-old self, so skinny and tiny, just looking at him like, okay.
Yeah.
And I'm just like looking at myself like, did you get that, Sarah? Did you get that? Because I guess I did, because like, hello. Mm-hmm. That's who I've become.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. And so again, shout out to Sarah's father, shout out to Paul for catching that footage, because you know, I've had private lessons, and some of them have been taped, but you know, just anyone who's able to get that, that's really special to watch all these years later. Mm. So just to go back to Jay, you went from working with Paul Kennedy and the Kennedys to then working with Jason Samuel Smith and ACGI, and then you were like choreography captain at one point.
Dance captain.
Dance captain, yes. So what was that contrast like from one to the other?
Oh, that's a great question.
Don't mind that.
Okay. So I had met Jason summer of 2001, the very first tap festival in New York, Tap City. I went as a student and I met him. I don't think I took his class, but I think I was watching his class. I was just somehow near him. And my dad was like, Sarah, this guy's good. And then we get to talking to him. He goes, you live in Los Angeles? I said, yeah. He goes, I'm moving to LA at the end of this summer. I'm about to start teaching at Debbie Allen Dance Academy. I was like, what? That's 5 minutes from my house.
Right.
That's in Culver City. I'm like, I will be there. So I remember my first lesson with Jason at Debbie Allen's. It was a private because no one kind of had known about him just yet. Like he had just come to LA, so the word hadn't really spread about this new cat in town. Yeah. So I remember my first private with him, and now I had already had my basics. You know, I'm a Kennedy kid, so I'm clean. I'm pretty solid with my paddle rolls, my crawls, my hop shuffles. You know, pretty basic. And he started off with a Steve Kondos warm up, and it was cool. And I was like, I was getting the vibe a bit, but there was some like weird things, and I remember like, dang, this is hard, and it just kept going, and it never ended. It felt like just this like long warm up, and by the end of it, I was like, woo, dang. He's like, great, get some water. That was the warm up. I'm like, dang. And I remember my mom being like, wow. Both of my parents came to this class. They were both like checking out, who's this new teacher? And I remember my mom being like, dang, this is gonna be good for Sarah. And so I went every Monday. Sometimes it was a private, sometimes cats would come, Kohei Nakamura from Japan, he'd come through, and like it started to build, and then he started these Monday night tap jams, and then I got to really be exposed to improvisation and how important that is, and like why we would do that. And so I'm like, cool, you know, here we are in this jam session circle, and Chance Taylor would come by, and Alfred Desio would come, and Channing Cook Holmes, and Jason Rogers. Like that was like a main solid group, and I was always like the youngest little one up in there, but I was getting it, and it was all a cappella. So the way it was ran is we had class till 9 or something. The jam started at 9 or 9:30, and we'd form a circle, and it'd all be a cappella, and Jason would set a groove, and it'd just be like goom, that, goom, that. It'd be something like simple like that. Sometimes it'd be like that. Right. And we would all hold that groove. So every Monday was a different groove. We'd all just form a circle. We'd look at Jason. He'd set a groove. We locked it in. We hit it. And then one at a time, you'd go. And now the thing about the way he structured his jam, it wasn't like everyone take 8 bars. It was like, go as long as you want. So each person would dance as long as they wanted to. So that means the average time of each person was 7 minutes. Average.
So doing Pakistan, trying to keep that together.
Yeah, and then we're here just grooving, like we're in a trance of this rhythm, looping it for Chance Taylor to take his, 15-minute solo that's just killing. And you're watching and you're grooving, and we're just like learning from each other. But that's how you get good. You got to be in a circle with cats who are way better than you, or just on your level, and just challenging everyone. And I was so young, and I was just like, eating it up. And I am, I ran like, I'm trying to get it, let me get it, get it. Yeah. So you would pretty much go until you were tired.
Right.
And then you pass it off. So, and then like during the school year, my dad's like, Sarah, we got to leave at 10:30 because you got to go to bed because it's a school night. It's Monday night. So I'm like, dang. So sometimes I'd get 1 round in because everyone would take forever. Yeah, wow. As if I was lucky, I got maybe 3 rounds in. But it was amazing to just be around such killers.
Yeah.
And then it expanded from there.
And so this ACGI stands for Anybody Could Get It. And so there was like a core, from my understanding, group.
From the jam.
Yeah. And So they were recruited from the jam.
Yes. So Jason started a tap company from the regulars of the jam. So I remember when I first joined it was with Chance, Jason Rogers, Channing Cook Holmes, John Kloss. Hello. Kohei, and Jay Sam. And I remember us having a talk of like, what should the company name be? And we like sat down at that big table at Dada in the lobby, and we're like, let's have a talk and discuss what should the company name be. And Chance Taylor was like, I've got one. We're like, what's that? He goes, the Tap Puppies. You know, they have the tap dogs. We can be the tap puppies.
God.
We're like, Chance, quit playing. My dad thought he was so cool because we didn't come to a conclusion at the first meeting. We're like, all right, let's come back next week. Everyone like have some options.
Right.
My dad was so convinced that his option was going to be the one that he got it embroidered on the hat.
Oh wow!
And what did it say? 672J1. We're like, and I was like, what is that?
I was like doing the math, like what is
So I don't know if you remember the Thomas Guide Maps book.
Okay.
Remember those maps that were like big booklets before we had GPS?
Yeah.
My dad lived with that thing in his car because he would drive all over LA. So on page 672, under the letter J and 1, was the exact location of where Debbie Allen's studio was located.
That's amazing.
So he felt like that was going to be it. He'd already got it embroidered on the hat. That's my dad.
That's amazing. Damn near like the longitude and latitude.
Yeah, exactly. Jay's like, nah.
Respectfully, Paul.
Respectfully. I'm going to have to declare. But yeah, so ACGI. So we started off with a lot of a cappella pieces. And we started getting gigs. So now by this point, ACGI has morphed. Eventually we added Chloe Arnold, Melinda Sullivan, Joseph Wiggin. And we started doing shows at the Temple Bar, this cool spot in Santa Monica. And a lot of places were actually like 21 and over, but they let us in because they're like, well, you're the entertainment, so you can be younger. So, but it was just really cool. First of all, Jason was around 21, 22 years old. And he came to LA from New York, not knowing anybody really in LA. Yeah. And cultivating a community. I just respect that so much. To like go to a brand new city, cultivate a community, classes, jam, tap company, and then eventually a tap festival, LA Tap Fest. Like that's huge, you know, and the huge for me as a student of his, you know, so and I always show love for Jason Samuel Smith. I love him, and I owe so much to him, especially about my passion and the way I approach tap dance. The fact that I have the skill of improvisation I got from him, and now I improvise almost everything. Every show I do, I'm improvising. I got that from shedding with him. Right. My understanding of tap as percussion and music like that was from him, from these a cappella ACGI pieces. And then even fast forward to like 2009 when we played at Jacob's Pillow for 2 weeks. We had a 2-week residency there. And he had some of those a cappella pieces. He had musicians writing original music for those a cappella pieces. So like that's dope, and that's a cool concept, and like that was killer to see too. So, and he's always supported me, you know, as his student, and I always appreciated that too. So Jason's just huge. Yeah. Huge.
And so you've worked with so many people. Like I'm realizing this more and more, how many people you have like worked with. So you had some time also with Skip Cunningham. And so I imagine you took something different from everyone. And from me talking to Skip personally, he spoke on like giving you something a little different than just some more steps or things like that. So if you don't mind sharing, what did you work on with Mr. C?
Mr. Cunningham, Mr. C. So Skip Cunningham would come around at the Kennedy School. So I've known him since then, since I was 10. So, because he would come and on Saturday nights and check in on us, how the kids doing. You know, oftentimes masters would come in and check in on us. Bayard Nicholas would come in and check in on us. How are the Kennedy kids doing? What they looking like? What they working on? So I've known Mr. Cunningham since then. And so I guess I was about in my teen years. that my father reached out to him. Now, him and my father have a cool relationship. Like, they're homies. My dad, I appreciate that about my dad, too. I think that's something beautiful, too, is, like, how parents are involved in the tap community and the teachers and stuff like that. There's relationships there, too. And I feel it now, too. Like, I have a lot of close relationships with parents. But anyway, my father called Skip and said, hey, I'd love for you to work with Sarah on some stuff. I don't know, show business stuff, whatever. I think she's in high school now. She's studying musical theater. I think that would be good for her to be working with you on whatever you want to work on with her, but maybe not tap, like other stuff. And Skip was like, absolutely. She knows how to tap. That's not the problem. She needs other stuff. He's like, okay. So he used to come over and give me private lessons. And only one time did we actually tap. And you know what he made me do?
What's that?
Running for laps for 15 minutes. Straight.
Yeah.
And I did it.
For those who are not tap dancers, I appreciate that there are people who tune in who are not tap dancers, but running for laps would be the equivalent of like jumping rope for 15 minutes, kind of. Something like cardio, same thing, repetition.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And he did it with me. I mean, eventually he stopped it and I kept going. He's like, And so once the song was over, he's like, okay, yeah. He goes, you know why I made you do that? I was like, no. He goes, I wanted to see how committed you were. And I see that you are very committed. You will go far. I'm like, I better. Just kidding. But I was like, okay. I could have told you I'm very committed, but it's all right.
Sorry, I have a question because this is how my mind works. Was it really one song?
It was a long song.
Or something?
Yeah, it was like a really long song. It was a long song. It was a Duke Ellington joint. And the only reason I knew it because at the time I had a TV. This is in my tap studio. So I had a tap studio in my house. My parents converted our living room into a dance studio. Thank you, parents. Wood floors, mirrors. We had couches. We had a piano and a drum set. Big screen TV. It was the Hoover's house, we called it. We had a back door, too. The back door led into the tap studio. So if you knew, you would just walk all the way through the driveway, around the corner past the backyard, and enter through the back door. And guess what? It was always unlocked. So anytime you wanted to, you could, free studio space, come on in. Our house was always welcome to everyone. So Skip would come to this house. So now, the reason I knew the song was going to be long, and I was like, I kind of knew ahead that this is going to be a long session. Yeah. It was, anyway, I had the time mark on my TV because that's how I had to play music. I had to turn on my TV and it showed the song and it showed like how long the song was. Wow. And I was like, oh my God, he's really going to make me do this. Like the length of this song. But anyway, so Mr. Cunningham taught me a lot about showbiz stuff. It was a lot of lecturing and how to handle yourself as a lady. He brought things like that to my attention. And like, hey, as a woman, there's certain things you got to be aware of and mindful of men and people and how you might get a job or not get a job and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh my God, am I really talking about this? And I'm like, okay,
How old do you think you were?
I was like 16, 16, 17. But he taught me how to use a microphone. He taught me how to like project to my audience. He was like, you have to work on other things. What else can you do? Do you know a poem? I was like, I don't know, maybe. I don't know what to tell this. So,
this is the real talk, tap talk.
Yeah.
So if you don't know, if you are new here, I know that as tap dancers, we normally have our top button buttoned and we're trying to be on our best behavior. But there might be swearing, there might be, whatever.
Oh, we can swear?
Yeah. It's open. It's open. This is grown
right.
folk time. This is Adult Swim, so.
Hey. So Mr. Cunningham was like, you got a poem? I said, I know this Jill Scott song by heart. Now, if you don't know Jill Scott, she's an R&B artist, amazing singer.
Yeah.
But a lot of her songs are freaky. But I was obsessed with her first album, Who is Jill Scott? Lord Jesus. Now, there's a song on that album called Love Rain. And, back in the day when you had CDs, you had booklets, and then there had the lyrics and stuff. So I would read the lyrics, and I memorized the lyrics to Love Rain. And so I was like, I told Skip, I was like, yeah, I know Love Rain. He's like, okay, well, recite it for me. Okay. Met him on a Thursday, sunny afternoon, cumulus clouds, 84 degrees. He was brown, deep. Said he wanted to talk about my mission and listen to my past lives. I did the whole thing. But eventually, like, it gets into some interesting words that I didn't know what they meant because they were kind of dirty and I was too young to, like, understand, but I was saying them anyway.
Oh my god.
And he was like, great. Anyway, I think the next week I told him, I was like, hey, every Sunday I go to Leimert Park and I go tap jam to this. I jam with these musicians at a jazz jam at the spot called the World Stage Jazz Club, Leimert Park. It's still there. And I was like, hey, maybe you would like to join my family and I am going. He's like, sure, would love to. So this was an event that I used to do all the time. Just even talking about like jazz jamming and jamming with musicians, was going to the World Stage Jazz Club. And my parents would go with me. And so I'd bring my tap board and I would call a couple of tunes. They'd let me tap and that was about it. So I invited Mr. Cunningham. I was like, hey, come. So he sits there with us and we're watching. And I'm like, I think I'm going to go up and tap next. So I'm like getting my tap shoes on. He goes, Sarah. And he whispers in my ear, he goes, before you tap dance, I want you to recite the poem. And I knew he was going to make me do it. So I already knew it. So I was like, okay. So I get up there. Now, Leimert Park is in a black neighborhood. It's like the Harlem of LA. All the musicians, mostly them, are older black men. And so they're all sitting there and they're watching me. Now they know me. I'm little Sarah. I'm the one who comes and tap dances. So here I go, and Rose Gales, who was running the jam, she's like, okay, what song are you going to do? I'm like, hold on, Rose, before I start, I grabbed the mic that the singers use. I'm like, I'd like to recite a poem.
Where is this footage?
I know.
Paul, if you're out there.
And I said all the dirty stuff, and all the men were like, wow.
and that's that origin story.
Yeah. And then I tap danced, whatever. The next week I went back, all the old men, Sarah, you gonna do the poem again?
Oh my god.
You gonna do the poem? Every week I'm like, when are you gonna do the poem again? I was like, you dirty greasies. But yeah, a lot of great times with Mr. Cunningham, and always grateful to you, Skip, if you're out there. Thank you for your guidance and your love, and I love you very much. Yes. I had him at my intensive last summer, 2 summers ago, 2019. We honored him, and he showed up to the footage night and did a little dance. That was awesome.
Yeah. Super shout out to Skip Cunningham, Chicago, a Chicago tap dancer, who I honestly just met a few years ago, and he's been on the podcast. So, check back and check on that when you have time, folks. There are so many places that we could go, but we've kind of already talked about some things I wanted to bring up. So do you want to talk a little bit more about your house, and not only that you had a studio where people could rehearse, teach, play music, all kinds of things, but you also were like why am I missing the word? But you were like a hostel for tap dancers.
That's right.
So if you don't mind sharing, like what was the full experience? It was obviously something different given whatever the time was.
Yeah, let's talk about the house.
Yeah.
So built in 2003. I was like 12, 13 years old. 2002, something like that. I was so excited to get this tap studio. Like, I remember the first day, like, it was all the wood was put in. My sister and I put on our socks, and we're like, whee!
So it was laid fresh.
Yeah, because underneath it was, like, this tile floor we had. Because it was just a randomly, abnormally large living room in this house. Like, just meant to be a tap studio.
Yeah.
So my sister and I sliding around, like, this is so fun. We have a tap studio. And so my dad and I were like, let's host a jam to, like, like a studio, break it in with a jam. And so we held the tap jam, and actually Sam Weber was there. He was in town. He brought this cat Andreas from Germany. You know that cat? I don't know.
Maybe.
He said he studied with Chucky.
Don't hold me if I.
Anyway, he came through. Denise Shearer, who's another one of my teachers. She came. I actually I made a sign-in list, and I still have it of my first jam.
Yeah.
So people can sign their names. And,
keep going. I'm just.
And They could sign in and like, show up, whatever. And it was so fun. And I was like, this is the life. Like, I get to have tap jams now at my house, and people would come over. No, Nico, you don't even know. I even kept people's water bottles.
Creepy.
It was super creepy. We gave everyone a water bottle. I think everyone had to write their name on their water bottles. And after the night was over, all the water bottles were still around, and I like saved them in the cubby for years. And
did you make like a big tap dance monster?
At one point, I was like, Sarah, why are you holding onto these things? Clean them out. But I held on to it because I was, so nerdy, but also just like, this is so cool.
Yeah, I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I used to host tap jams, and then Jason would give me private lessons on Thursdays at my house. We did a little night in Tunisia choreography, I remember. And then, what else happened? Oh, I had my bat mitzvah party at my house. After my bat mitzvah, we had the after party at the house. It was an after party tap jam. So Jason Samuels, Melinda, Jason Rogers, and Chance Taylor were the tap dancers at my bat mitzvah.
Wow. Yeah.
I know. I have that footage too somewhere on VHS.
I kind of remember you talking about that.
Yeah, that was fun. But eventually, it became this hub for tap dancers. Like, and then I started the Monday Night Tap Experience. After Jason moved back to the East Coast, nothing was happening on Monday nights, and I wanted to keep the Monday night tradition going. And I was like, the class and jam idea, but I thought, I want to teach class, but I also want to take class. So maybe I'll start something at my house. This is 2008, October 2008. I'm going to have a different teacher every week come in and teach a tap class. Like, cool. I'll go first. And then I think I had like Christopher Broughton. And then I think like I had like, I don't know, Anissa or somebody else. And then I remember when Chris taught and a few others taught, I was like, damn, like, we all need some work on our teaching skills. And then I was like, but it was a $5 tap class, very informal. And then after the class, we would jam. I was like, you know what, maybe we should add this aspect of critique. And that's when I started, like, the idea of Monday Night Tap Experience being an educational experience for teaching. And so how it would go was different teacher every week, hour and 15-minute class, however they wanted to teach it. At the end of class, everyone who took the class would form a circle, and each person would critique the teacher. And we'd give the teacher notes or feedback on their teaching style. Like, hey, good or bad. Hey, Nico, loved your class today. Combo was amazing. Maybe next time you could work more with counts. That would help me. Next person. Actually, I really loved the way you taught it. That was perfect for me. The combo was just hard, so I don't know. Maybe you could break it down a little bit more. I don't know. Each person would say a little something, and at the end, the teacher would do a self-critique. Say, hey, actually, I was really nervous coming in. It was my first time creating something on the spot. Or, yeah, I came with something pre-choreographed, so maybe I taught it too fast, blah, blah, blah. Everyone was, and we just share, and then it was like, yay, hurrah, hurrah, $5 on the table, let's jam! So it was just always fun and a welcoming experience that I made sure I wanted to cultivate, that everyone felt very safe in this environment. And it was so fun, and it lasted for 9 years at my house.
Crazy. And
then we moved to Debbie Allen's studio, because we had to sell my house. We had to sell it. But Debbie Allen called me. She's like, hey, I heard your jam's no longer going on. We'd love to host it at Debbie Allen's studio. I'm like, oh, yeah, thank you so much. For free. She's like, no rental. Just come and use the space. We just want a tap presence here at the studio. I'm like, that is so nice.
Yeah.
Shout out to Debbie Allen. So, yeah, the house. I mean, a lot of pieces were choreographed in that house. ACGI, when we went on So You Think You Can Dance, that piece was choreographed at my house and rehearsed at my house. Syncopated Ladies was all choreographed. A lot of the pieces were choreographed inside of the house. So the house has a lot of energy, and people loved it, and it was just a vibe. LA Hooper's house. So
Yeah, for anybody who knows what that is, like, of course I danced in there, but I did Insanity in there. Like, when I've stayed over there, it's like music, workouts, just everything.
Every LA Tap Fest, this was like the host hotel. I mean, everybody would stay at my house. There was one time I had 8 people staying at this damn house. Like, because we had 2 sofas downstairs. We had one person on each. In my room, I probably slept in the bed with someone on the floor. I had a loft, so probably 2 people up there. And then if my sister was gone or something, some people were sleeping in her room. Like,
And then Sarah's always just treated me so, nicely. So she would like put me in the closet or something.
Nico gets the scraps,
right.
as usual.
Yeah. But
it's so fun.
But yeah, like I said, we know each other, so I'm asking these questions that I already know the answers to. But it was a special place and a special era of time, like 9 years. And
yeah, it really was.
And yeah, like a lot of really good memories. And the Monday night tap experience was something new, and that was cool for me as a teacher to hear that critique, and that had me do that a few places, because some people, if they didn't understand the critique thing, or like if they somehow didn't know ahead of time, that I remember some people saying it made them feel weird, or even if they did know, it's just like it's a thing to like humble yourself to take.
Humble yourself. I mean, we critique Utah, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like twice. Yeah.
J. Samuel Smith taught. We critiqued him.
Mm-hmm.
We critiqued Michelle Dorrance. Yeah, but like again, if you're amazing, then it's all going to be great critiques.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important. I mean, humility is major in tap dance. I mean, I learned that from Jason too. Always be humble. Always stay humble.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate that about great tap dancers who are humble, to be like, yeah, critique me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm always curious, because if we don't always get the most honest critique after the show, it's usually like just standard practice for the audience or people who know you to say good job.
Sure.
But even from teaching, so I took that, and I didn't do it regularly, but in some of my classes I would explain about the Monday night tap experience and in the beginning, and then tell folks afterwards, you can give me a critique, and and that was very useful, because you never know, somebody who you thought was getting it well maybe needed something else, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So but from the LA Hooker's house, you already mentioned Chance Taylor, but I want to go back to that, because all of these things we've talked about so far obviously had a lot to do with your development. A piece from here, piece from there, not like a piece, but like a big chunk of information from here and there and everywhere.
Yeah.
But what was your time with Chance and Zane like, and between street performing and other things?
Ooh, it's so funny when you say Chance, but then you add Zane. It's like, oh.
Mm-hmm. So for those who don't know, especially if you're not a tap dancer, can you talk about these brothers?
Sure. So Chance Taylor, master tap dancer, studied with Louis Dupron in his younger years. He was in the movie Tap. If you've seen the Gregory Hines scene, Italy do, Italy that, he's in there right behind Gregory. A killer teacher on the West Coast, and a very particular kind of cat. When I met him, I was 10 years old. He was very soft-spoken. How you doing? Yeah. Sweetheart of a guy, the kindest soul ever. Loved Bob Marley, loved John Coltrane. Those are his like musical idols. And he would listen to them all the time, and like he'd burn me CDs and give them to me. And that was the thing he would do with a lot of people. Actually, he'd always burn CDs for people and then give them out. Tap dance for him, I feel, was something more of a spiritual experience. Less, maybe not so much of like, I want to perform. Of course he performed, but for him it was like more internal. But he would teach classes, and I would take his classes at Hama's dance studio in the Valley. And then he had a brother, Zane Musa, and Zane was a phenomenal, I'll say it again, phenomenal saxophone player, reed player. He played clarinet, he played it all. I mean, one of the best of the best. Like, he could hang with anybody. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
co-sign me on that because
Oh
like,
yeah, for sure. Yeah, you all should check out Zayn Musa on YouTube or something. You know, just look around.
Like brilliant. Yeah. So Zayn used to tap dance too as a kid. So there's a footage of him at the Phil Donahue show when he was very young. He won the tap contest when the movie Tap came out. They did a contest of kids all over the country, and whoever won got to be featured on the Phil Donahue show. So it was him. There he is, you know, with his LA Raiders cap, you know, yeah, just coming in hot.
Check that footage too.
Check that.
It's one of my favorite pieces.
Yeah. So killer. So Zayn used to tap dance, but then morphed into being a jazz saxophone musician. So oftentimes they would be together. And Chance and I got very close. He and my father. He invited us to this jam in San Pedro. This is actually where my family lives now. San Pedro is 30 minutes south of LA. So we went, and Chance was like, hey, you know, come meet my friend Peter. This is where I meet Peter Loggins.
Wow. Whoa.
Yeah.
Haven't heard that name in a while.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Peter Loggins is a swing dancer.
Oh my.
/ encyclopedia of knowledge of everything, swing dance and of tap dance and of that era. So I meet Peter Loggins, and there's Zayn, and he's playing, and this guy Fred, there's this cat named Fred, and he's, you know, dancing all over this place, and it's like a little cafe. I forget the name of the cafe. It might come up to me, Urban something. And we ended up jamming there, and it's like, and we would do this pretty often. Like, he would invite me often to go, and we would jam. And now, so I just loved that tap dancing with Zayn because he used to tap dance himself. So he is probably the best musician I've ever played with because of his listening and his ear and his appreciation for tap. So he would listen to you and you know, like riff off of what you're doing as the tap dancer, but yet bring it back around to then also inspire you for another idea to catch that he's done. And then he also knows how to like give you space and let you shine a little bit, and he'll just groove for you. So he was just this killer musician who really just took you on a journey when you played with him. And this, when I say play with him, I was like tap and sax only. Like he was enough. He could hold it down, and his time was locked. And like, if your timing is killer, like you just groove and vibe. So him and Chance together were just incredible. There's footage of the LA Tap Fest, right? That's on YouTube, 2003. Because Zayn used to be the musical director.
Yeah.
For the LA Tap Festivals.
Crazy.
In their first few years. Now. Then I would see Zayn on the jazz scene when I was like entering my 20s and going out all the time. I would see Zayn all the time. And Kamasi Washington, I know a lot of tap dancers check out Kamasi. I mean, he was right there with Kamasi, you know, kind of, he's older than Kamasi, so he was kind of like bringing up Kamasi and like the LA jazz scene gang. Everybody knew Zayn, everybody, and admired him and loved him and just knew that he was a beast. Unfortunately, both of them are no longer with us. Rest in peace. Unfortunately, both of them took their own lives. Rest in peace. And that was very hard and heavy for all of us in the tap community and in the jazz community. And I'm going to speak particularly for those in Los Angeles. Because, well, for me as a student of Chance, that was like heartbreaking. The whole tap community was like, wow. But those who knew him, and that's the other thing, is like Chance was around a lot when I was a kid up until 2005 or so. He was bipolar, and he had a form of a switch, and however best I can describe that. And I noticed it. I remember I was with Melinda Sullivan. We were driving from Caravan Project rehearsals to the Monday Night Tap Jam. And she was driving, so I was sitting in the passenger seat, and we pull up to the jam at Debbie Allen's, and we see Chance outside, and he's just like kind of wild, and we're like, what? Is that Chance? And he sees us, and he like runs up to us, and he jumps on her car as she's pulling up, and like, hey guys, And she like slammed on the brake, like, what? And they like jumped off and ran away, and we're like, we looked at each other like, what the hell?
Right.
Was that Chance?
Right, right.
Now, before, Chance didn't drink, he didn't smoke, he was a vegetarian, he wouldn't kill an ant on the floor. He would literally he would save ants, and like was very sweet about the world and nature, and he was one of those like kind of outcasts. You'd ask him like, hey Chance, when's your birthday? And I was like, whenever the universe felt it was right for me to be born. You're like, okay.
Or my favorite is when Trey met him and was like, so where are you from? And he was like, planet Earth. Trey's like, I thought you'd be a little more specific.
That's very Chance Taylor. So seeing him like this was crazy, because then he had this cigarette and then he had this beer, and I'm like, so when do you drink and smoke like this? Mm-hmm. He like totally changed. And it was very hard for us to handle this because it was such a huge personality shift.
Yeah.
Eventually, he was like, I'm going to move to New York. I'm like, okay. So we had a going away party for him at my house. We had a jam. And I remember me and him jamming together. Like, it was weird. Like, it was a circle and everyone's one at a time. But then at one point, like, he and I, like, just, like, met in the middle. And we were, like, dance like this around each other, and everything was like blurry behind us, and we're just like, you know, like when you hold hands, you're like, it was like that. We're just like, and he just looked at me like, yeah, and I was like, this is kind of creepy, but I love it. What's up with Chance? It's going crazy. And then like his dancing kind of changed. It's always been killer. I mean, y'all, like Chance Taylor was killer. When we talk about technique, like killer technique, musicality. Phenomenal groove, time, like feel, like embodied everything. Like when he would dance hunched over, and he was a tall cat. He would dance hunched over, and he'd like let his body just feel the music, and you just like, oh, like this. He'd dance with his eyes closed. Like I've seen him fall off the stages multiple times, fall behind into a drum set. Like so, he was just kind of reckless, but that's what I mean by spiritual. Mm-hmm. Like he was just like in his zone. So it was always a treat to just watch him. I mean, my grandmother would come to all of my tap shows, and she loved Chance. She was like, Sarah, I love Chance. My grandmother was very artsy, and she was a poet and a painter. And she wrote a poem about him, and she did this beautiful drawing of multiple Chance Taylors, like different like angles like this. It was dope.
Where is that?
I have it. It's dope. And then even the way she worded it, the like her printing of the words was all like funky and stuff. She was like, this is how I did this whole thing for Chance. She made an extra one for him, and he loved it. Yeah, man, but that was kind of the decline too of him, because he wasn't around anymore. And so this happened in 2005. 2005 was like the digital age birthing year. Like that's when digital cameras first started coming in. Shortly after that is when YouTube started. So he wasn't really around, which is why we don't have that many clips of him.
Yeah.
Like all the footage I have of Chance, I have hundreds of hours of footage of him. It's all on 8mm tapes and VHS tapes, because that's when my dad was filming all of our lessons and jam sessions and everything. But since then, like, there's hardly any footage of him because he kind of wasn't really around.
Do you know how things went when he went to New York, or what happened there?
Oh, it was a mess. And then he went to Japan and he got arrested and like got bad.
Yeah.
I don't know all the details of everything, but his health was on decline. He wasn't taking his medication. All of a sudden, he showed up at my house unannounced on a Monday night, knowing that we would be there on a Monday night somehow, knocking on my door. And Aaron Williams, who was living with me at the time, he was like, Chance Taylor's at the door. I'm like, oh shit. I go, I'm like, hey. He's like, hey, you got money? Do you have any money? Yeah, okay. Right. You know, and then I was like, can we take you anywhere? He's like, yeah, I don't know. So Aaron like dropped him off at like a bus stop or something. It was just strange because it was sad to see him like that. Yeah. Kind of like homeless. He was like homeless. And, but also like fine. Yeah. Like he didn't want our help like that. He was just like, you got some money, like just a little money. So it was just like, okay.
Yeah.
And then I would run into his mom here and there. His mother, Becky, she was super sweet, and she'd come to tap shows often, and I'd be like, "How's Chance?" Or I'd ask Zane. I'd see Zane all the time, like, "How's Chance?" He's like, "Oh man," he kind of at that point was like fed up with his brother. He was like, "I don't know." And last I had heard was he was in the I don't know, some kind of home.
Yeah.
And near USC, and I was like, okay. And I told myself, I was like, you got to go visit Chance, Sarah. Like, you better visit Chance. Make sure you visit Chance. Don't forget to visit Chance.
Right.
And then it was too late, and he took his life, and that was it.
Yeah, and so I think it's important that people educate themselves, like yourself, on what it means to be bipolar, because that's not something that people often understand or care to understand if it's not directly affecting you. And I'm not going to make this about me, but I'm working on a show that kind of speaks to mental health and mental illness between musicians and tap dancers, and it's a touchy subject, because in some ways, it's helpful for people to know about these things, but in others, it's like, it's not the thing we want to highlight about somebody's career. But just like Chuck Green, suffered from, mental health issues, and it's something that could be said enhances your artistry in a way, but can affect your life depending on, is this something that you can really control? But I think that is something that people should really educate themselves on, because people shrug it off, like and make comparisons, like the weather's being bipolar, like it's its own thing that people should know about. And so I had as a girlfriend in high school who was bipolar, and so that really had me like researching and learning a lot about it. And so I always knew, there was something more to Chance, but then when I found that out, it made a little bit more sense. And just like you said, though, his dancing was all encompassing for his entire body. Like he oozed the vibrations that were coming through the floor.
Yeah.
And a lot of tap dancers, you're not really moving much here, your legs and then maybe your arms, but you're not doing a lot of contracting and like bending and all of that here. And that's not the first thing I noticed about him, but just to jump in from my experience, first time I saw Chance dance was LA Tefest. I'm forgetting what year, but me, Jamani Taylor, and Lee Howard were standing next to each other for the opening jam at the end of the Monday night. And for those who remember, the old Dada, in the room that the jams would be in, there was the entrance over here, and then we were on the opposite, corner. We're all the way over here, and Chance comes in, like it goes around, it gets to us, and then it starts to get towards the entrance of the door. And I guess Chance was waiting until it got like right to here, and he jumped in. And a lot of people were just dancing where they were. He like started, like kind of starting to hover into the circle, and then he like started doing something where it was like felt like a twister, like a tornado of rhythm and things, and he came from that end towards us, and me, Lee, and Jamani are like pushing each other out the way. But it was like such an energy where it's not like he was running, but what he was doing had such an intensity. And from the moment he put, his toe to the floor, the vibrations in the room were different. Like, when somebody can make your hair stand up, or just like you feel something extra, I don't know that I could, even with all that, really describe well what it was like to experience Chance dancing. And unfortunately, if you missed it, you just have video, but even in video, you can see what Sarah's talking about. I mean, there's a Facebook page that has all these clips, and like when he was in Japan, and 2 times he fell off the stage. Right?
And he was singing Bob Marley. Don't worry. Now, Chance had a beautiful voice. He used to sing a lot. the one song he loved was Unchained Melody.
Mm.
Oh my love. Yeah, the song from Ghost.
Yeah.
You know that?
I'm just ready for more.
Darling.
I'm not gonna. Is it gonna be a duet?
I'm good for your touch. He would sing it so beautifully, and he would sing. I would say, "Chance, can you sing me the song again?" He's like, "Oh," he would like serenade me. He was so sweet. He was so nice. Yeah, and he was such a staple in the LA community. I mean, he was at every jam, every show, everything that like, everybody wanted him around, and he was always around. And, yeah, it was a huge loss, and I was so heartbroken when I heard that he had passed. I was guilty. I felt this tremendous amount of guilt with myself, of like and frustration, of like, why didn't you visit him, Sarah?
Yeah.
You said you were going to. You should have. You know, and a part of me felt like, I don't know why I felt this way, like all that, but like I felt like I could have saved him. Like I really did feel that. I was like, and I say this because the last time I had seen him was we did the show at El Camino College. Hiroshi Hamanishi was teaching tap there, and he invited Chance and I and Joy Hewitt to perform. Rest in peace, Joy. Now, Joy was this elder woman, and you know she does her tap stuff, you know that, and that was her vibe. And so we're all sitting there, and Hiroshi's like, "So, what do you guys want to do in the show?" And Joy's like, "I have my things set. Like, I know what I'm doing, my little choreography." And I'm like, "Cool, I'll improvise, you know, whatever." And then Chance is like, this is like 2009 or something. He was like, "I just haven't been dancing. Like, I haven't been tap dancing in a long time. Like, I don't feel like I have the stamina to do a whole thing by myself. Like, will one of you dance with me?" And he asked Joy first. He's like, "Joy, would you want to dance with me?" She's like, "No." And I'm like, "Chance, can I dance with you? Like, I would be honored." And he goes, "Under one condition, Sarah." I said, "Okay." He goes, "You can't be in it for blood." I'm like, "I won't." He's like, "Don't come for me because I don't have the stamina."
Yeah.
And he really was like skinny, smoking, like he was like, he was fragile. Yeah. And I understood that. But I was like, okay. I was like, I'll be good. I'm like freaking out that we get to dance together in a performance. He's like, okay. And this performance is actually on YouTube. That's the one that me and my like Miller and Ben Hills. I'm in a dress and like we're trading, and there was moments I did go in for blood, you know, so to speak. Is like I would challenge him. I'd be like, "Hey, Chance, like I remember you used to do a lot of toe knocks. Let me do a lot of toe knocks. See if you can start pulling out your toe knocks." And he's like, you know, and he would go for it. You know, I did push him. Yeah. But he handled it, and he could do it. Like it was in there. Yeah. I think he was downing himself before. You know? Yeah. And then I would bring it down. Like let's give him a breather. Yeah. And then I would just look at him like, "Where you at? Where you at?" And he you know, he just like, "All right, second wind," and they would like go, and it was like, "Ooh!" And then like we ended this shaving a haircut. It was dope. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean these are things for for tap dancers out there to consider. Is when you're dancing with somebody, it often becomes competition, but it also should not. Also, it should be conversational, unless going for blood is the objective. But you should be able to do, in my opinion, at least a conversational. You should be able to have a conversational,
gauge energies. And
yeah, and like you said, be able to test the waters a little bit to see where are the limits, respectfully, if you're in a situation like that. But wow, I mean, I want to ask because I think this was around the same time that I was street performing, that we were maybe sending clips back and forth or whatever, or maybe it was watching things when we were in town together. But I was street performing in Chicago, and you got to actually street perform with Chance. So what was that experience like, and what kind of solutions did you have for when your boombox would go.
So check this out. So he invited me to street perform with him in Pasadena. And I go, my dad and I bring in, we just come. He had it already set up. He had his own board and his own boombox and his Bob Marley and John Coltrane CDs. So here we are jamming a Coltrane, and I'm like, what is going on? It's crazy jazz.
Mm-hmm.
But I was in there, I was ready. I was like, okay, let's get it. And this is the type of cat he was. We had a little break. We were just like sitting there, just waiting. Drinking water or something, and this homeless man comes up to us and he goes, "Hey man, that's a really cool boombox." And Chance goes, "Yeah, you like it?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You want it?" He's like, "Yeah." Here. And Chance just gives him the boombox. I'm like, "Chance, now we don't have our music." Okay. But, like, it just happened like that. Like, Chance is so generous like that. And just free-spirited and just in the moment like that. It was so funny.
I want to get back to this, but can you tell the story about him with the ants?
Yeah.
Because that's another just character thing. Not about him as a dancer, but about him as a human being.
Yeah. I think I got this story from Gabe and Mindy Copeland, where they were rehearsing. I was not there, but this is a story that I've heard. They were rehearsing at some dance studio where the door itself, the front door to the studio, was like very like squeaky and like loud. And anyway, they started rehearsing, and apparently somewhere in the lobby area there was like an ant trail of near some sweet food or something. And I guess like they thought Chance left to go to the bathroom or something, but he ended up just kind of walking, and they just keep hearing like like the door like screeching. They're just like, what is that? And it was Chance with a piece of paper, like gently scooping up little ants onto the piece of paper, as many as he could get, opening the door, dropping them off in the little concrete, come back in and get some more ants. And they just kept hearing the screeching door, like, what is that? And it's Chance Taylor picking up the little ants and taking them outside.
Yeah.
Because he wouldn't dare kill them. He wouldn't want to put raid on them. So that's the kind of cat he was with animals.
Yeah.
I mean, he had vegetarian tap shoes. They were all made out of cloth. They were terrible tap shoes. They did not last long. I mean, when you consider also like the skill and talent that he had, like the way he would tap dance, like even the thickest of leather shoes couldn't handle his feet, let alone cloth tap shoes. The taps themselves were holding on by a string, and like he would guest perform with ACGI. We did this gig at the Getty Museum, and we're like, all right, special guest performer Chance Taylor. Chance comes out, and he's tap dancing. His toe tap, I remember he was doing these like crazy toe tap. It was holding on by one screw, and it was just like looping around, and then eventually it like flinged off. And then he had another solo later on in the show, and what did he do? He like taped it with like the blue like duct tape.
Stage tape.
Yes. It was like this blue tape tapped around the toe tap, and of course that flew off too. Hot mess, it was a mess, but listen.
Right.
He tried to make it work.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know. It's important to know of these characteristics of, tap dancers and entertainers. And that was, I don't know, really cool when I heard that story. I feel like it was for the first time in the past year. And I'm not trying to put myself up too high because, but I heard it right after I had like some ants in my house, and like I was doing the same thing.
Oh, yeah?
And it was like within a few days or a week of me doing that I heard that story, and I'm like, that's amazing.
That is amazing.
Yeah. But I want us to go back to you street performing with Chance, just to ask, because I know that like Zayn would pop up every now and then, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the first clip I saw was, did you have like one of those portable PlayStations or something? I don't know why I feel like it was like from that or what. But anyways,
PlayStation?
Like, right. I'm forgetting how I saw this. It wasn't. I don't think it was just on the TV. But anyways, the first clip that you shared of you street performing was with Chance and Zayn, if I recollect correct. Okay. Did Zayn join you?
Yeah, yeah. there were so many times. So then it's like, yeah, sometimes Zane would come, sometimes we have a boombox. But yeah.
Did he ever like teach you anything like specifically, not like indirectly or but like did you ever do choreography or anything like that?
Not choreography. He had a few dances that were set that I didn't learn. He had other students, Michael and S.C. Waldrop. They were his main students, and they learned all his rep. Hiroshi also learned a lot of his rep. I mostly took open classes. I do remember a little bit of get up, stand up. Get up, stand up. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I remember a little combo to that. Like I still have the rhythms in my head from that. I remember it was like shake a bit, shake a bit, shake a bit. Skeptic told him about shake a dip, shake a dip, shake a dip. Like, what is this stuff? Like he challenged us so much. Like his tap vocabulary in 2003 was like above anything we're doing now. Like it's nasty. Yeah. It's hard, and like his classes were the hardest tap classes. You remember LA Tap Fest? Yeah. And like he would show up to his class, and I knew him, but a lot of people that LA Tap Fest were from out of town, so they didn't really know him. He's not the type of cat to be like, hello, everyone, my name is Chance Taylor. Welcome to class. We're going to start with a warm-up. Welcome, blah, blah, blah. He's not that at all. He's like, come in, put on his shoes, stand in the front, toe drops. And everyone's chit-chatting and talking. I'm like, toe drops. I'm like, oh, y'all don't know. Like, the warm-up has started, and y'all are chit-chatting. So I had to be like, yo, class has started. And then everyone, like, finally, like, 2 minutes in, finally everyone's like, oh, we're, like, in. Mm-hmm. And then he's just, like, going ham. And you're just, like, trying to keep up. And then he'll stop the warm-up. And then we're like, woo!
Do you know what it...
start a combo.
Right. Do you remember, was his warm-up, like, was it an all-together thing or a call and response? And I asked this because I remember taking class from him. And it was one of the best warm-ups I've ever had in my entire life. But I cannot, for the life of me, remember what we were doing. I can't remember if it was like all of us together or call and response.
It was usually like all of us together, and you would do a few steps repeatedly. Yeah. So then you would just catch it, and then after 8 times, you would remix it or move on. Yeah. So you'd just be ready for the next step. But it was like long, and it was just kind of like whatever he wanted to do. Yeah. You know, it was cool.
Super unique. I was drenched.
But you would be drenched for sure by the end of warm up. And then it's like, all right, combo, and he's like, would barely break it down. I mean, he would do that call and response. I think that's how he taught because he hardly spoke. Yeah. So it was like, and then we'd all get really hit it, and then eventually he'd like add on, but he barely spoke, and he was like kind of shy, So he was like, hey, okay, yeah, moving on. Mm-hmm. I don't know, he might check in, but it was pretty like sink or swim.
Right. Wow.
For sure.
Yeah. One more Chance story that from my side. My mother is just like Sarah's father, been around the dance in a major way, and she would volunteer to drive for the Chicago Tap Fest and then the LA Tap Fest. And so she picks up Chance one day from wherever, the hotel or wherever she picked him up from, and went to drop him off for class. And the original Dada, that was, I can't remember if it was a one-way street or it was just, no, it was a two-way street, but it was like one lane. So she drops him off, and she just sees him like starting to walk off and not into the entrance. But there's like traffic, so she like tried to park the car, but she couldn't. So she like moves up, parks the car, runs, starts trying to find him, but she can't. And Jay Sam comes out like, "Yo, where's Chance?" She's like, "I don't know. He got out of the car and he just like disappeared into Los Angeles." And and it's funny, but it's just interesting knowing that story. I'm glad that he showed up for the class that I took with him. But he was such a character, and I'm super thankful to have met him. So we just had a nice little portion right here just on Chance, and hopefully that has you folks interested. If you don't know who he is, go and check out Chance Taylor, not just on YouTube, but
100%. One more little side note, fun little story, Ben. Whenever you're hanging out with Chance and you heard a siren, fire truck, whatever, he would always, if you're like in mid conversation, be like, hold on. Okay, what were you saying? He would do a prayer whenever he heard a siren. I just wanted to pray for whoever that siren was for.
Yeah.
You know? And I do that now. I'm like, okay, I hear a siren, I'm going to do a prayer because that's just him. Again, just another little cool thing about him. Like, that's really sweet.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I have something to add to that, but I don't want to make this about me, so we'll talk later. but yeah, like, so you can check him out on YouTube. But one more thing, there is a Facebook page that has a lot of footage that's not on YouTube.
Chance Taylor Tap Dance is called on Facebook.
Yeah,
you can find videos of him performing, falling off stages, just warm up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you want to tell the people you're involved with?
Well, my friend, Chance's good friend, Christian Nelson, is the one who started the page. After Chance passed away, we all were like, where's the footage? We all want to share to celebrate him. So he started the Facebook group page and uploaded all these cool videos of them. So you'll see him, Chance and Christian dancing together and stuff. But anyway, eventually he just handed the page over to me. So if any of you have any more footage of Chance you'd like to upload or send my way, I can upload it to that Chance Taylor Tap Dance page.
Yeah, check that
And
out.
I also have a tribute to him on my album called For Chance. It's a whole a cappella piece tribute to him. I created it right after he passed. I got a group together and I was like, I just need to create something to honor him. And I created this piece. It's in 6/8. And that's like a vibe that he was like often in. So I was like, this is something that he would feel. And then I shot a video for it as well with him dancing in the background. Just really nice. So you can check that on YouTube.
Do that. Yeah. So one more thing from the early times. I think it's great that as long as I've known you, you work with musicians of different kinds. And while we here in Chicago, we're trying to, just recently with Lisa, who was last on the podcast, we talked about, her and Jamani Taylor, who were of age, being able to like get around the music scene here before I became of age and, started to try to join in. But you had you have a relationship that with the music scene, not just the jazz music scene, but the music scene period in LA that, from my understanding, started with like, you going out dancing and things like that, and just like nightlife,
Nightlife, but I didn't even wait till I was of age.
Right, and neither did I. But I feel like you were able to finesse your way. I don't know, maybe as
a young lady in a tight dress with high heels schlepping a tap board.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta let me in.
Exactly.
Just kidding. No, I had a fake ID. At 19 years old.
Yeah, but like I can see to now how the years of you going out to these, not just, to dance, but to jams and, hanging around not just jazz musicians, but
funk
musicians,
Latin jazz,
entertainers, period, has like built your network in a way that, for somebody who not only me, but for anybody who hasn't done that, they're not going to have the same network. So if you could just take us through a little bit, like how that started and, where that's gotten you now.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for saying that. Well, I wanted a fake ID immediately because I was getting invited by friends to go to these jams, these killer events. And I kept saying, I'm 19, I'm not 21 yet. I'm like, man, screw this. I just got to get a fake ID. But it was actually a real ID. It was just my friend's ID. It just wasn't me. But it was real. I was Angel for a while.
Imagine that.
Imagine that. So the first spot I went to was at this nightclub called the King. And they had an event called The Floor. And it happened once a month, the third Monday of every month. Monday is a common theme, huh? And so I would go and I walked in and it was this universe of like dancers and musicians jamming together, like a huge big open floor packed with dancers. Like they formed this big circle cipher, and break dancers would go, flamenco dancers, swing dancers. And then I'd bring my tap board and I'd plop it down and I'd tap dance. And everyone's just going crazy over everybody because everyone's actually like a professional dancer. Did I ever take you?
Yeah.
So fun. And then you have these musicians playing music for all the dancers, and they'd constantly change the vibe. So sometimes it'd be like a reggaeton, boom, skagga, or it'd be like, it might be like a house feel, it might be hip hop, it might be funk, it could be anything. And the band would alternate with the DJ. So, then the DJ would play all the hot hits or like some old school hits or, the whole salsa vibe. And then all the salsa dancers would go crazy. Like, it was lit.
That shit is like a movie.
It was a movie. I mean, like Save the Last
for
Dance.
Real, though.
For real.
Yeah.
For real.
Yeah.
And professional dancers from LA. Like, everyone in there was professional.
Or in LA. Sorry. Right? Like, it wasn't just local folk.
Oh, right. Or, yeah, sure. Yeah, anyone who was in town. But it was just, like, really legit. It was so cool. So there is where I met a lot of people.
Is that like one of the first places that you went to?
That's why I
started dancing?
Yes.
Oh.
That was the reason I got my fake ID. My friend Peru was a break dancer and swing dancer. His girlfriend, Angel, the ID I got, she's a swing dancer. So, like, that's, like, Minbo, all those cats that I met through Peter Loggins would show up at there and, like, swing dance. Like, they're legit doing Lindy Hop with the flips and the things and the twirl around to, like, hip-hop, to, like, house music.
Right.
It was insane. So I met all this huge network of dancers of multiple styles. And then I met all the musicians who were jazz musicians, funk musicians, Latin jazz musicians. They all would go. This was the jam of jams for dancers and musicians. And it happened every month. And it was the best night of your life every month. And so anyway, I loved that. And so from then on, I would build this network of cats and friends. And then they'd be like, oh, come to this jam. Or, hey, every Monday night, aside from floor nights, there's a jam at Libertine, or on Tuesday nights it's Jason, what's his last name? Jason's jam. That was Libertine. Never mind. Then I moved to Hotel Cafe. Like every night of the week there was a jam, and then Wednesdays and Fridays, Kamasi Washington had his jam at the Piano Bar in Hollywood. So those were those options. Thursday night, there was a spot in Beverly Hills. There was always a jam. And so I'm like, cool, every night, me and my tap board in the trunk of my car, we're hitting it. And I would tap dance every night of the week. Sunday nights was the W in Hollywood. The only night there wasn't anything was like Saturday night. Saturday night was like the one night I didn't go out, funny enough, because it was like there was no jam on Saturday.
LA's night scene is so crazy.
Yeah.
Things like that, and closed at 2, right?
Yeah, we closed at 2.
Yeah.
So anyway, but yeah, Sunday nights at the W Hotel in Hollywood, I would be a special guest performer, and I would just volunteer. I would just volunteer my time and just go. But they would announce me I'm this set on to perform. Brenna Whitaker would invite me to perform, and then there's Justin Bieber sitting in the front row, and then Stevie Wonder is walking around, and it's just celebrities. What's his name from Kiss? Gene Simmons. Hanging out. His daughter Sophie Simmons was singing. They're church best friends with Brenna. And so then I meet Gene Simmons, and we have this whole conversation about tap dance. And it's cool, you really are in this LA Hollywood scene with celebrities.
Well, so I'm watching our YouTube comments. Thanks to everyone who's tuning in. We really appreciate you all. Estefania, Annette. I'm assuming this is Dylan. It says Dylan does. He asked, does the floor still happen?
The floor does not still happen. The floor was still going until COVID. It was still going.
So it's just on hold, maybe.
Actually, I want to say it did end a little before COVID. But during COVID, we had a great, virtual The Floor. And that was really fun. The Floor Productions. And they had a show based off of the night. So they would take a lot of the dancers from the improv night and do the floor show. So we'd all produce this show of and they would mix different genres of music with different dance styles. That was dope. So they had, for example, mariachi girls, the Trio Ellas. They're mariachi singers, a trio, and they're playing something swinging in Spanish for the swing dancers. Oh, so sick.
Wow.
And then you'd have like Boogie Frantic out there popping, he's like a master popper to like this crazy like violin and like an opera singer. And it's like opera singer with popping. And it's like, what? And like, I don't know. And then I would like trade with a flamenco dancer. And it was like me and Manuel Gutierrez. And we'd be like going off. Like it was so dope. I miss it. I have tons of videos though. If you like YouTube Sarah Reich, The Floor, you'll see all the jam videos. You'll see me with the musical director Walter Davis, saxophonist, boom, coming in, jamming with us. Everyone just going ham.
Wow.
But that's how I build my network.
Exactly. Yeah. So, for those who don't know, Sarah's famous. My friend is famous, and I ride in the trunk in the back. No, but you've done so many things recently. Like there's your internet footprint your fingerprint is crazy. Like there's videos everywhere. Like you said, of you doing the floor, all these things. You have current things that you've done. Like we'll get to your album, and then like Covered in Taps that you're doing right now. But are there any examples of like anything you could think of that's up right now, collaborations you've done that started with a relationship built at the floor? Or just Jazz Bakery, World Stage, any of these places?
Oh man, Jazz Bakery. You won't mention the Jazz Bakery, okay. Okay. Well, the Jazz Bakery was a jazz club in Culver City that I grew up going to, and that was probably the first jazz club I actually went to and performed at. LA thankfully had a couple like that, and the World Stage were all ages, so you didn't have to be 21 or anything. But the Jazz Bakery is where I met Danny Janklow, and that's where Danny and I, we were 16 years old, and we met. He was playing with Stefan Harris, okay. Casually, like, it was a field trip for me at Hamilton High School. I went to Performing Arts High School. And I was selected in a very few. It's really cool. It was this Fox. It was sponsored by Fox, the movie company. It was called the Fox Mentorship Program, and they went to Performing Arts High Schools and they said choose. They went to the teachers and said choose 10 of your students, your best students, to be a part of this program. And my musical theater teacher chose me. And then we would. It was so sweet, but like we got to do field trips. And one of our field trips was to the Jazz Bakery. I'm like, oh, dope, we're going to Jazz Bakery down the street, boom. But like we would leave school early to go on these field trips. Like I'd like have full permission to like skip my class or whatever. Yeah. And our field trip was to go to the Jazz Bakery and see Stefan Harris. And there's Danny Janklow. I'm like, this kid looks really young. And so once they finished their set, I went up to him. I was like, excuse me, like, what's your name? He's like, I'm Danny. I'm like, well, I'm Sarah. I'm a tap dancer. He's like, oh, that's dope, whatever. I'm like, can I get your number? Like, I think we should be friends. He's like, oh, for sure. So we exchanged numbers, and then we started working together at 16, like at Jazz Jams. Jonathan Pinson, great drummer, another one of my best friends. We would play together. Jonathan Richards on bass. He was around back then. And then also, if it wasn't John Pinson, it was Tony Austin on drums. And Tony plays with Kamasi now. So, like, that's kind of funny. And then Austin Peralta, who was a great jazz pianist who was BFFs with Zayn Musa, and they had this great relationship. And he was this young protege and of piano players. May he rest in peace, unfortunately. But anyway, like, killer jazz musicians. What was your question?
Right. Any relationships that started at any of these places? So,
thank you, sorry. So, Danny Janklow and I ended up writing music together, and that's the birth of my New Change album. We wrote Gemini Vibe. We're both Geminis. We have the exact same birthday. And also Vaping Blues and New Change. And then when I went to the floor, I met Carlos Rodgerman, who I co-wrote It's Tappening with. So that was another connection from the floor. Yeah, I mean, just tons. And I'm still work with these people today. I still work with all these connections from the floor.
Yeah, nice. Is that how PMJ started for you?
Good question. So the way I got hooked up with Postmodern Jukebox was through Shoshana Bean. Now, Shoshana Bean is Shoshana Bean. She's she's an amazing singer, but also a star and has been on Broadway, and people know her from being on Broadway, Wicked and Waitress. Now, what's funny, like when I met her, it was at one of these music jams at Libertine, and she would come and sing her ass off, and I'd be like, damn, she's amazing. And I met her like I met everyone else. I'm Sarah. What's up? What's your name? Shoshana. Awesome. Nice to meet you. You're amazing. I'm about to tap dance. And then she'd be like, wow, you're great. So, like, that's how you just meet people. Cool. Nice to meet you. Great. Let's be friends on Facebook.
Mm.
And then I had this night I used to produce at this restaurant where my sister was working. It's called Typhoon. It was at the Santa Monica airport. My sister's a helicopter pilot, so she wanted to work by the airport to network. So what was cool about this restaurant is they used to have big bands and all kinds of live music. And so I talked to Brian, the owner. I was like, can I host a tap night here? He's like, that'd be awesome. Yeah, whenever you want. So I started hosting tap nights. We called it Tap Night at Typhoon. And then I invited Shoshana to be a special guest because, you know, I just knew her as a friend. And I remember at the time I was working with Melinda Sullivan. Melinda's like, I was like, yeah, I have this girl coming in. She's going to come sing. Her name's Shoshana Bean. Melinda's like, wait, Shoshana Bean? I'm like, yeah, you know her? And she goes, I know of her. She's like famous. She's this huge Broadway star. You mean she's going to sing in our show? Like the Shoshana Bean? I'm like, yeah. She's my friend. And Melinda's like, how is she your friend? Oh my God. I'm like, yeah, she's actually coming over to rehearse with us, so get ready. So she came over and we did this whole Proud Mary thing, and Shoshana would talk about how she used to tap, blah, blah, blah. So Shoshana's from Portland. She attended those Portland Tap Fests back in the day. So she's like, I know Diane Walker. I'm like, you do? She's like, oh yeah, I used to take her class. So Aunt Di still knows little Shoshana Bean. You know, she's like, oh my God, I used to take class from Honey Coles and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, that's dope, you know? Wow. So she already, like, Shoshana Bean is dope for that, like, knowing real deal tap, not just the musical theater Broadway tap that would have been just only her world.
Right.
So it's super cool. Anyway, so I've known Shoshana from back then. Fast forward, Postmodern Jukebox, they're coming to LA. They're about to do a residency. Scott Bradley, the producer, hooks up with Shoshana and says, look, you know, I'm looking for a tap dancer because we usually have a tap dancer in the band. Who do you know? Well, I know Sarah Reich. You got to get Sarah Reich. And that's how it started. And she called me. She's like, Sarah, have you heard of Postmodern Jukebox? I said, I think I have. I think I've seen a video on YouTube. She's like, would you want to sit in? And I was being all diva, low-key. At first I was like, sit in. Sit in. Nah.
Famous.
I don't know. This was like at the brink of my like, okay, I need to start, you know, just taking my shit seriously. Maybe not sitting in all the time. Like I should be getting paid for money.
Right.
You know, like there's a certain point where you pay your dues and you sit in and you do the free gigs, and then at a certain point you're like, okay, pay me something. You know. Yeah. So I was like, I don't know if I'm trying to sit in, Shoshana, but thank you for letting me know. All right, I hear you. A few weeks later, hey, so they really want you to come, and they really are looking for tap dancers, and I'm really pushing you. Can you please come? They'll pay you. I'm like, I'll be there.
Said the magical words.
You said the magical words, and then I show up and I meet Scott Bradley. He's super sweet and cool. I'm like, awesome. We do sound check. He's swinging that shit, fucking ragtime, and I'm like, yeah. And I'm tap dancing, and we do this ragtime version of Fancy. So I'm facing this way. That's like the audience. It's just sound check. It's just me, the drummer, bass player, and him on keys. And he's facing me, so he's got his keys angled toward me. So I'm tap dancing, and I'm just like, I look over at him, and he's playing his keys. He's looking over at me, and we're just like gave each other that stank face, like, we swinging out here.
The ultimate musician sign of approval. The stank face.
For real, like we swinging.
Yeah.
I'm like, I like this gig. And it was awesome. And we had a great show. And it was after that first show that they offered me to tour with them. And the rest is history with that. But like, Shoshana Bean.
Big up.
You know?
Wow. That's so amazing when musicians that we get to work with have some connection to tap dancing, because we are musicians as tap dancers, but it's a particular way to play with us and for us to play with musicians.
Yes.
So do you mind talking about that for a moment? Just like, musicianship for tap dancers who want to play with musicians.
Yeah.
And this might sound funky, but for musicians who want to or end up playing with tap dancers.
It's such a thing because you never know who you're going to get when you play with someone, and you never know what their experience is with tap dancers. So you can go up to musicians, and this has happened multiple times. So, for example, the World Stage, the jazz club I mentioned in Leimert Park. The first time I went, I go to Rose Gales, older woman, and I'm like, "Hi, my name is Sarah. Can I tap dance?" What? My name is Sarah. Can I brought my tap shoes. Can I tap dance? You want to tap dance? Yes. Can I please tap dance? What are you gonna tap on? I have there's a board. I can bring it up and tap this. And she just kind of like waited, like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And she knew Chester Whitmore because Chester's always in the hood.
Yeah.
Leimert Park is where I live now, so I see him all the time. So anyway, I plop my board down, and they loved me. Mm. And then from then on, it was like, come back next week. This was great. You're so sweet. You're good. This is great. Come back.
Right.
But it was that first initial, like, me being so shy, so nervous to even ask, can I please tap dance? Right. And then her even just being like, But then it was like, from then on. And I think I just learned from that experience, like, this is going to be a thing, right, Sarah. So know this. And I know tap dancers out there, you've dealt with it too. I'm sure you have too. Mm-hmm. Of like with musicians who don't know maybe. So sometimes it's like, can I tap dance? Like, what is that? What do you mean? Mm-hmm. What are you gonna do? Like here now? Like how? Mm-hmm. Like, you know. Or sometimes you'll get cats and be like, you tap dance? Yeah, come on up.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's also a thing of association because you know, we can't help who sees what. And somebody who maybe doesn't take tap as serious or, you know, kind of imposes themselves into a situation like that, musicians might get that one experience with a tap dancer, and then you say you're a tap dancer, and it's like, you know, this person's going to dance the whole tune. Or,
there's that too. You know. That's when I was in New York for a while. I was dating a musician in New York, and I was around all these jazz cats, and like some of them were like, man, I hate when tap dancers come to the jam. Mm. I'm like, what? What do you mean? Man, they just come over and they just tap all over everybody. They don't even know how to take a solo. They don't know how to listen for choruses. Mm. You know, they tap over the trumpet solo, piano solo, sax solo, everything. They just think it's all about them, and then we just can't wait to get them off. But yeah, that's when I realized too, like, well, I never learned etiquette.
Right.
And then I thought about it. I was like, shit, when I went to the world stage, I tapped the whole time.
Right.
I tapped over solos. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And no one told me, though.
Exactly.
I mean, I was a teenager, but I was like, they gave me 2 full songs, and then they're like, you're done. Sit down. You can do Stompin' at the Savoy, Sunny Side of the Street, the songs you want to do, and then you're done.
Yeah.
And but I was like, cool. But what did I know? All I knew was tap festivals, mm-hmm, where the tap dancer does solo the whole song.
Right.
So I assumed that that's how it worked. I call the tune, and I tap the whole song. I didn't know anything about etiquette and like caring for a bass solo or piano solo. I just thought I was the solo. I'm the star. I'm the tap dancer. So it's all about me. No one had ever taught me anything other than that for jam situations. Because even then, back then with Jason Samuel Smith, we had a tap jam the first Sunday of every month at 2nd Street Jazz in downtown LA in Little Tokyo. And it was a jam for tap dancers. So it was the same thing. You would go, you call a tune. Zane was there too. Hey, I want to tap to this song. Great. Boom. We'll play it for you. You tap the whole time. That's all I knew.
Yeah, exactly.
So until that musician in New York said that to me, I was like, oh, damn. I've been doing it wrong this whole time.
Yeah. Yeah, so tap dancers take notes because, you know, you might be able to have a better experience or leave a better impression by, you know, having a better understanding for which environment you're in, and like Chuck Green said, knowing when, you know, what to say, how much to say, and not saying too much. Within your allotted time, you can say, you know, what the tune calls for or go crazy, but not going over that. If everyone before you is taking 2 choruses, maybe you should take 2 choruses. And we have been spoiled sometimes in that way where, you know, when musicians are coming for a tap festival, they're going to accommodate to whatever is happening, whether it's for the show or a jam, and you just go. But that's not what happens when, our worlds interconnect, but when we go to their platform where it's not made for tap dancers, it's made for musicians. And then you have to step up your musicianship and consider etiquette that might be more of a common courtesy and unwritten rule or something like that. So it's very important in any situation for you to pay attention to like what's happening around you, and try not to impose yourself, because that happens so much.
100%. And it's like, this is why I started Tap Music Project, because I'm like, I need to start teaching this stuff to these kids, because these kids are going to want to start jamming, and I don't want the respect for tap dance to be any sort of diminished, because I've never wanted to hear that again. That guy saying, I hate when tap dancers come to the jam. I was like, that scarred me for life. I'm like, no, we cannot be doing this. So I have this Tap Music Project intensive where I teach tap dancers how to handle themselves at a jam session, how to call a tune, how to know the form of a tune, how to take a solo over it, and what the difference is from a jam session versus a tap festival and making your own arrangement. So join us, the Tap Music Project.
Yeah. Do you have any dates coming up?
I do. Oh my gosh, I can announce now.
Yeah.
We're gonna do one in Monterrey, Mexico, June 6th-ish. I don't know those exact dates. And then Orlando in July, Orlando, Florida. And then today I just set up Minneapolis for August, the second week of August. And we're gonna have Nico as our guest teacher for August.
Yeah. So I'll see you there.
So I'll be announcing those dates very soon, y'all, and it's so much fun. And we will have live musicians, and we work on writing original music. So please stay tuned for that. But yeah, that's another part. About musicality stuff is like, that's why I wanted to teach this stuff. So I feel like with this intensive that I've been doing now for over 5 years, this is our 6th year, right? Where 2020 was like that awkward year of like, what?
Keep going. I'm gonna refill your cup.
Thank you. But I've really been working on cultivating also a teacher training program with it, and having some of my students who have attended multiple intensives to help understudy me as I teach this course, to then have them teach this as well elsewhere. But it's super fun, and it's really great, and everyone learns so much, and I learn a lot too, and I'm constantly challenged by it. And then I also bring in different musicians. So like Nico asked, how do I talk to musicians about playing for tap dancers? This is a great example. I'll hire musicians probably that have never worked with tap dancers. And as I'm schooling the tap dancers on how to play with musicians, I also talk to the musicians well, things like stop time. Y'all know what that is, right? Thank you. Shovel Life Productions. Yes. Don't forget to order your Shovel Life cup.
Yeah. And don't mind me, I'm my own assistant and producer and all of that. So you get the drinks and all the things.
Zebra Productions.
Zebra Productions. Mundo, watch out.
Anyway, I teach these musicians. I'm like, look, check this out. So the musicians freak out at these intensives because they're there and they think they're the rock stars. Because musicians, musicians have their natural little egos and stuff. So they're sitting there like, yeah, we're cool. And I'm like, all right, let's start whatever, blah, blah. We start writing a song, and I'm like, all right, tap dancers, this is the groove. Let me set something real fast. So my musicians hold tight. I go to the front of the room, and then I get to the tap dancers. I'm like, all right, let's do it. Tap dancers, hit it again. Cool. After that, let's go. Okay, good. All right, put it together. Yeah. And the musicians are looking like, just jaw dropped. Like, how are these kids from ages 10, 15, 20 learning these rhythms and these phrasing ideas and all these concepts so fast?
Mm-hmm.
And so I go back to the band and they're like, yo. I'm like, I know, right? It's dope, right? And they're like, yo. I'm like, I know. Welcome to the club.
Mm-hmm.
Tap is the shit.
Yeah.
So they're just like, dang, And then they watch these kids solo and they're like, wow. And especially drummers are just like, damn, this is like a long drum solo. I'm like, yeah, but it's thought out and it's it's beautiful, and then we dance and we express ourselves, and then like I'll have all the kids do formation. So it's not only are they learning all this cool material, but now they're like doing staging and they're performing it. There's a showcase, and the musicians are constantly like, dang, and they're like, some of them, because I've done them in multiple cities at this point. Some of them have cultivated relationships with kids in their town. For example, in Fort Lauderdale, Drew Tucker, the vibraphonist, I had him and the musicians come play. He was like, wait, how many of you live in Fort Lauderdale? And like Hannah Kravik was like, I live here. He's like, I need to talk to you. And then he teaches for a high school band, and he would invite her to tap dance with his high school band. And he's like, I need to like keep this going. So sometimes the musicians are that inspired that they're like, hey, let's keep this going on, tap with the musicians out here. And they'll be like, I have a jam every Tuesday, like come over to my jam. You guys are awesome.
Yeah. So
that's cool. Like even just like cultivating pockets of tap and musicians in different cities too. That's really dope.
Right. Yeah. I'm really excited to be a part of this in Minneapolis because I've seen videos and behind the scenes things and all that, and it seems really cool.
Yeah.
Now, we spoke on the things that tap dancers could do to help the relationship between musicians and tap dancers, which first and foremost, like that's something that was ingrained in both cultures. There was a time when big bands did not tour without having a tap dancer, and we were just, as tap dancers, I'm saying we were involved in a major way in the jazz era and so on and so forth. And then, there was a time where that somewhat fizzled out, it didn't die.
Not completely.
Exactly. But it's interesting that tap has been kept out of jazz history and American history and all of these things. And, like I took a class in college, it was a jazz class. And because I was in the room, they showed Bunny Briggs performing with Duke Ellington. But because the teacher knew I was a tap dancer, I don't think he was going to show that if I wasn't there and I wasn't vocal about being a tap dancer and why is this not, showcased or at least referenced or mentioned.
Right.
But anyways, so my question is not just like how we covered how tap dancers could, help the situation and the musical foundation and exploration and all the Asians, but how do you think that musicians could make our communication with them smoother, easier, or is there anything that you find is like a common oversight or anything like that?
Like to bridge it?
Yeah. Or something that they maybe don't understand that's common.
Well, listen. My first few years of all this hanging out with musicians, I felt like I was the underdog. And I placed myself in that. And I was like, hi, nice to meet you. Cool. I placed myself below them. I was like, they're musicians. I'm just the tap dancer. So I had that perception until my confidence built, and I gained more respect. And I'm chugging. And I'm like, cool. Like, now I show up to spots and I know cats. Like, I know everybody here. Everybody knows me. Up, Sarah. Oh, you want to sit? You want to play? All right, cool. Boom. Like, to the point where, like, me, Danny, and John Pinson will show up to the Blue Whale jam session. And all these cats are like, put me on the list, put me on the list. And we show up and we're like, we're ready to play now. And they're like, all right, everybody out. Sarah, Danny, John Pinson, y'all, whatever you want to do. Like, we would roll up like, what's up? Like, we really did. Yeah. And so but it took years to get to that point. And like, paying the dues, you gotta pay your dues, y'all. Show up. Like I said, I went out every night. Yeah. Every night, showing up. Because then when you show up too, your chops get better. But I had all those years of Jason's jam. So I was already at a somewhat skilled level of like, I know how to keep time. I know how to like go. I know how to listen. Like, I know how to rock. But then I always also just got better. And that's what really was really cool about everyone in our scene is we watched each other grow. I watched Kamasi Washington grow. Like, that's dope. For me to see him now as like a superstar of jazz. Right. I'm like, rock and roll, man. Because like, we were kids back in the day at the world stage. And now I'm like, look at you, rock star. Yeah. I'm so proud. Like, everyone is so proud of Kamasi. Anyway. So it got to this point now where I'm have built my confidence, and I no longer saw myself as I'm the tap dancer. I'm more like, I'm the tap dancer, you're the musician. Hello. Not in any kind of cocky way, but just in a way of like, I can be confident in like who I am and what I believe in, and confident in tap dance and the power of tap dance.
Yeah.
Because y'all can play all day long, but guess what? Everyone's chit-chatting in the back, and they're not paying attention to your piano solo. But when I come up and tap dance, guess what? The whole club shuts up. Everyone's quiet. And it happens every time. You hear tap dance, it's like...
Yeah.
Dang,
which is something that I heard, which is part of, you know, what happened when tap and jazz fizzled out of the main, like being the thing when rock and other genres came in. But then when they try to come back together, I feel like I've heard that musicians felt like tap dancers were upstaging them.
Oh, right. I heard that too.
Thing. Yeah.
The tap dancers are upstaging. Well, sorry. Did I do that?
Yeah.
But hey, I get it.
Yeah.
But then it got so far away that then it was like, well, where's the tap dance? So now it's like, tap dance, that's cool. Yeah. You know, and tap dance is what's going to make the show pop. Tap dance and postmodern jukebox is what makes the show pop.
Right. Yeah.
It's the part of it that pops.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm like, what's up with the work right now? Because I'm like, this is the secret weapon. Tap is the secret weapon. Y'all wake up out there, because y'all need to hire a tap dancer. If you want your show to pop off, get some tap dance.
And ask around about the tap dancers you're getting.
Yes, do your research, Mary.
Because representation matters, and you never get a second chance at a first impression. So just like we were talking about a moment ago, you know, when some people are like, a tap dancer, they might have had somebody who, you know, whether they are an avid tap dancer or not, or they just own a pair of shoes, they maybe didn't approach, you know, what they did with intention. So I just want to throw that out there. It's very important that we pay attention to our intention with what we're doing, because yeah, there's involved with musicians, with tap dancers, with entertainers, jugglers, no matter what you do, there's like, you know, maybe a little ego involved, but it's important to know, like, what are you getting on this bandstand to do, you know? But yeah.
Communication, all that stuff. You got to know how to communicate, know the language. You have to listen to jazz too to know the language. Like, that's the other thing. Like, we've grown up listening to jazz heavy. Like heavy in love with the music. Yeah. You know, I was saying earlier, like being in love with the era of 30s and 40s. Being in love with jazz music is a part of being a tap dancer and a great improvisationalist, and like having heard various jazz musicians and their sound development and their lifespan and career. I mean, look at Miles Davis's career. Like, damn. Like, but it, you know, we've done that work too, of like listening to all that, and then seeing tap dancers also develop their own sound and style. We can tell a Jimmy Slide from a Chuck Green from a Steve Condos. Yeah. Because it's like, you know, you've studied them, but they've also cultivated their own sound and style too over decades. So all that just to say, like, you're constantly working on it. Yeah. But anyway, back to this communication with musicians. It's like, it's now to the point where I'll talk to musicians and I'll look at them like they're crazy if they don't know about tap dance. I mean, like, who, you know, drummers will be like, Sarah, you're such a musical tap dancer. Like, what drummers do you listen to? I say, I listen to tap dancers, bro. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. I mean, I love me some Jeff Hamilton. I love me some Louis Nash, you know, some killer drummers. But I listen to tap dancers. That's who I check out. What you know about it? What tap dancers do you check out, homie? And we're like, tap dancer? I don't know. I thought you said you studied jazz at Berklee School of Music. I thought you went to Juilliard, bro. You don't know about tap dance? So I'm schooling them like this, like... You don't know? Yeah, exactly. And then they feel like, damn, I should know. Like, you should know your history. You talk about, you know your jazz history, but you don't know about tap dance? Bro.
Yeah, you talk to any of the jazz musicians that you look up to from the jazz era, they're gonna know some tap
They
dancers.
will know them. They will have hung out with them. They will have done some fun stuff together.
For sure, for sure. Yeah,
You know?
yeah. We have tap dancers like Harold Cromer bending trumpets.
Facts. My greasy boo Harold Cromer fell on Dizzy Gillespie's trumpet. And that's why it's bent. And now they make trumpets like that. Because of his greasy butt.
Yeah, yeah. Was it Max Roach who wore like
I can talk about Harold like that because he was my best friend, by the way.
Yeah,
No disrespect.
yeah.
Y'all already know I love my man's
Yeah, but I think it was Max Roach who wore like Capezio, like which is a dance shoe brand.
yes. Or was
Like,
it Papa Joe Jones?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Joe Jones who would wear like tap shoes basically without the taps. There are many jazz drummers who were also tap dancers or who tap danced.
Louis Belson, Buddy Rich, they tap dance.
Max Roach.
Roy Haynes.
Mm.
God bless him. He just turned, I don't know, 95 or something.
Mm.
Yo, you talked to them. When I met Jeff Hamilton, my favorite jazz drummer, I was like, first of all, like, starstruck. And I was like, I'm a tap dancer. And I'm like, so honored to meet you. And he's like, oh, tap dancer. I used to play with Bunny Briggs. I'm like, Bunny Briggs? That's awesome. He's like, oh man, he was amazing. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, tap dancers know what's up. Yeah. And Louis Nash, too. The reason I love him is because because he's very much like Max Roach in that they sound like tap dancers when they play. Mm-hmm. Where do you think they get it from?
Yeah.
Where do you think they get it from?
Mm. Yeah, it is very much well, not very much, but it is documented in more maybe in a oral history than in your history books and your college courses and all of that.
Miles Davis's book.
Yeah, Miles Davis's book. You know, in Thelonious, not his book, but Robin D.G. Kelly has a book on Thelonious Monk where he speaks on Thelonious Monk being a tap dancer, considering himself a hoofer to be exact. And I would share more on that, but that's kind of a source for my Thelonious Monk tribute show. So I'm not going to give away too many of those things. I mean, I will say that Thelonious Monk wrote a tune with tap dancers in mind that was actually framed the same way as the Shim Sham Shimmy. Yeah. So.
And Ray Brown writing music for Manhattan Tap with Heather Cornell. Like, some killer musicians even work with tap dancers. Like, that's dope. Mm-hmm. You know? And I foresee that, like, down the line. You know, like, I don't know, when I'm old and gray, like, they'll be like, oh, it's Sarah and Danny Janklow. Danny Janklow's bad, man. He plays. So it's like, he'll probably, end up being this jazz legend. And Jonathan Pinson for sure. So like that's kind of cool to have like cultivated these relationships so young.
Yeah. Yeah. And we should mention that there are like, folks that you just mentioned, but there are musicians who do give tap dancers their respect and do, know about our culture within, the genre of jazz. I said jazz, jazz. But yeah, shout out to those who aren't afraid to mention us, or like, honestly, it's something that Jamani Taylor talks about. We could use more musicians who invite us to their gigs because, we're inviting folks to our thing and we're always trying to make sure that we pay the musicians, and oftentimes working on a shoestring budget or, whatever the case may be, we're maybe paying the musicians and not able to pay the dancers. So we've been, for years trying to be, really, really conscious about how we further develop our relationship with musicians. But it would be great if more folks invited us to their things, which does happen. But, it would be nice to see that happening more.
It is happening more.
Yeah.
I'm thankful that like in LA,
in different places.
Yeah, different places. But like even like Scary Pockets, they're a YouTube famous group, kind of like Postmodern Jukebox, where they do cover songs in a funk way. They've invited me to do a video with them. That was really awesome. So I'm like, that's cool. I think Postmodern Jukebox for sure definitely was a huge platform for me and for tap dance. because all of a sudden cats hitting me up like, yo, Sarah, I just got invited to tap with this band because they showed me a video of your bad romance video, and they're like, we want to do this, and we know you tap dance, you want to be our tap dancer?
Yeah.
So I think, you know, representation again is important, so people seeing that is a thing is like, oh, I want to do this. Who do we know that's a tap dancer? Everybody know a tap dancer? Yeah, there's this girl I know, call her up. You know, it started happening actually a lot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like in different places, and I'm not trying to get too into that, but like it depends on a lot of different factors. You know, I don't want to sound away, so I'll just leave it at that. Yeah. But you know, like it depends on certain aesthetics and things. It's not always just about like, you know, how you play or, you know, for a tap dancer or otherwise. But yes, it is happening. I'm just saying it should happen more. And I keep on, yeah, I'm gonna keep editing myself.
Okay. It should keep happening more, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it will.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've covered a lot, and you know, in a 2 hours, you know, going on 2 hours. Yeah. But speaking of music and musicianship and tap and all of these things, you yourself came out with a project. What was it, like
2018.
Okay. Yeah, 2018, your New Change album, a tap album. Behind me, actually, there are a few tap albums or albums with tap dancers.
Yes,
but that's not something that we see, excuse me, a whole lot now. So what was that experience like for you? Did you love it? Did you hate it? You know, did you, how was that just all around?
Yeah, well,
Not did you love it, did you hate it, but like what did you like, what did you learn from it, I should say?
Well, I wanted us to entertain this concept of tap dance musicianship, and the rhythms that I hear when I tap dance, I hear them as melodies. So I'm like, damn, how can I write down these melodies in a way to write music? And I figured the best way would be through collaboration. So I called Danny Janklow. I said, humor me. I want to try something. So we met up at the dance studio. I said, I'm going to create this rhythm. I'm just going to improvise something. I don't know what I'm going to do. But then I'm going to scat it to you. And then I just want you to play it back to me on your saxophone. I said, okay. So I go, okay, I'm just going to create something. One, just like did that. I'm like, all right. So it'll start after one. One bigga digga 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 da, shigga digga 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 da da da. And like it was like there's somewhat of a melody there, but not that much. But bigga digga 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 digga, you know, bigga digga 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 da da. At least digga 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 da. So then he's like, here's that. He's like, oh, how about little 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 lubia, little 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 do do. I'm like, cool. Let's do it again. And he's like, cool. I'll just change the melody the second time. Little 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 lubia. He is such a master. He is a master of melody. Great. Then we'll go. Play that. He's like, that's a lot of notes. How about I just accent your accent? So he's like, do it again. Okay. One. Digga 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 da. He's like, I'll hit that. I'll hit those. He goes, digga 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 dee da. I'm like, all right, cool. Then I'll do all the shiggy diggy. All right, that's cool. Let's put it together. Boom, that's 8 bars. Sick. Let's repeat it. Boom, there's 2 A's. Let's write another 8 bars. All right, here I go. Shiggy diggy diggy, diggy diggy da, diggy diggy diggy, something like that. Boom, boom, diggy 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 da. It's like, okay, boom. I'll let you hit those. Boom, boom, and I'll come in. Shiggy diggy diggy da. So I keep going. I'm like, it's like, I was very lucky that I had Danny Janklow in particular because he is phenomenal. And I realize that now. Not every sax player could have really done this as well as he did. And then, well, you know, finish up. I'm like, oh, he added that. I'm like, oh shit, grand rules. And let's repeat it. I'm like, oh, look, we have A, B, A. That's a 32-bar chorus. That is the standard form for any jazz standard. We just wrote a jazz standard, like a tune. Woo! We were so happy, and we were like, no one was at the dance studio at the time, so we like go to the front desk lady, and we're like, hey, Carla, come out here. We want to show you what we just did. We just wrote a song. She's like, let me see. And we like performed it for her, and we're like, isn't this so cool? She's like, this is so cool. Great. And then we had a show at the Blue Whale where we did all these standards. And then at the end of the night, I was like, okay, we want to do a world premiere of our original song. And I was like so excited to announce it. And then I got together with Carlos, and then I had this idea. I was like, I have this rhythm, boom, dig it again, dig it again, dig it again. He's like, oh, I like that. Keep repeating. He's like, ding, 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 diddly ding, 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 diddly ding, 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 diddly ding. You know, and then he went, boop, boop, bip, boop, bip. Like, yeah, let's keep that. And I was like, cool. And he's like, let's write a bridge. He's like, da, da, da. He's from Spain. It's like, there's all this magical keys. I'm like, yeah, it's beautiful. Da, 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 da. I'm like, cool, let's do a stop time section. And I want to write the hits. I'm like, remember this, too. Here I go. He's like notating. Hold on. Okay, keep going. Like, but hold on that one. Hold that one off. Those are all syncopated hits. So he's like writing all the rests, you know. Anyway, it was so fun. We ended up writing It's Happening. Both of these songs took like an hour to write, an hour and a half. And then from then on, I continued writing songs with Danny, and then I had New Change was with Danny and Carlos. And then I got together with one of our songs, Tap City. We did in Vancouver, at the Vancouver Tap Fest. It was a themed class of tap music project, and they had invited me to do my own show with my band. So we had the band already, and we in class we wrote this song, and it was so good. But I was like, damn, I want to put this song on the album because like this song is dope. And so it was originally called Van City for Vancouver, and then I changed it to Tap City. So that's the origin of that one. Then I got together with an Armenian cellist, Artyom Manukyan, and we wrote a song together. And then that one goes into sevens in the middle. I wanted to pay tribute to my mentor, so there's vocal excerpts. It starts off with a voicemail from Harold Cromer. I used to save all his voicemails from 2008. And that sets it up. So then you hear Ted Levy, Brenda Buffalino, Arthur Duncan, Ivory Wheeler, Jason Samuel Smith, and Diane Walker. So I wanted to make it also an educational tool for people listening, like listen to these masters and then speak. And whether it's, them speaking, or speaking to me directly, I wanted the listener to feel like they were being mentored too. Like, this is what it's like to like hear some inspiring words from Ted Levy, or how I talk with Ivory Wheeler. So that was pretty cool. So amongst the original music, you hear vocal excerpts. And then one of the tracks, The Groove, has excerpts from No Maps on My Taps and About Tap, 2 tap documentaries, both directed by George Nierenberg. And George had just recently re-released them and in movie theaters. So I'm like, this is the perfect time to strike while the iron's hot. And he called me. He's like, I want you to come do a Q&A because I know you're obsessed with these films. I'm like, yeah. So at the Q&A, I was like, hey, I'm working on an album. Could I use vocal samples from these documentaries? Like, could I have your permission? He's like, let me talk to the president of the motion picture company. And so he did. And that cat emailed me and he's like, you have permission to use it, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah. So then I chose my favorite quotes from them, and then we put a beat behind it. Sam Barsh produced it, and it was fun. And then we have one cover of My Baby Just Cares For Me. Respect the Dance is another song I wrote with Maya Sykes, a singer. So that was cool to write a song with a singer. We were on tour together with PMJ, and I was like, hey, we're stopping in Nashville, and my good friend Alex Shaloff is a killer videographer out there. I would love to shoot a video together. She's like, cool. I was like, but I'm all about writing original music right now, so are you down to write an original song? She's like, yeah. I'm like, cool. And then we forgot about it, and then it was the day of, and I'm like, hey Maya, I'm knocking on the dressing room. I'm like, are you still free to shoot a video today? She's like, oh yeah, that was today, huh? I'm like, yeah. Are you done to leave in an hour? She's like, oh yeah, let me just get my makeup on. She's like, what are we gonna do? So as she's putting on her makeup, I'm like, well, a common phrase in tap dance is respect the dance. So I was thinking maybe something along those lines. She's like, great, so that'll be the title. I'm like, okay, cool. She's like, so what does that mean, respect the dance? I was like, well, it means to respect the art form, honor your elders, teaching the next generation to do the same, the children, la la la. She goes, okay, so how about it goes, respect the dance. And she just starts humming a melody, respect the dance, respect the music, honor your elders. And I'm typing it in my iPhone, writing down, because she's still doing her makeup. She's like, write this down, save these lyrics. And Maya's so brilliant at memorizing lyrics that she like wrote it and then memorized it. Day of. We go to the studio. It was like a recording studio that was just being gutted out to be refinished. So everything was wood on the inside. It was so dope. It was perfect. And then we like had to climb a ladder to get up there. And here's Maya and her pumps climbing up this ladder. And I'm like, Tatum Buford, shout out to her and her mom. They were there helping out. And we did a couple of takes of it. And then this one we liked, we kept. It's just a one-shot take. It's on YouTube. And that's the start of it. And it was just tap and vocal. And then for my album, I was like, Sadiq Dubar, who is my producer, we were like, let's put a whole like arrangement together. And we contacted my homies who I met from the jams at Libertine, the Regiment Horns. I called them up. I was like, bros, I need you for this recording session. And they're like, we're actually with Justin Timberlake right now, getting ready to play for the Super Bowl. I'm like, dang. He's like, but we love you, Sarah. We want to do it for you. Whatever you want, send us the song. We'll just use his recording studio and shoot and record it at his studio. So I've got horns recorded at Justin Timberlake's studio. Okay. And my homies, and they just sent it over. We mixed it in and had Gordon Campbell on drums, beast, one of my dearest friends too. And like, I'm just so thankful that all the musicians I have on there are friends of mine that I've cultivated relationships with, that we've worked together with, like, it's just so dope. And I'm so appreciative and I'm very thankful for everyone who played on it. Shout out to Tai Long Lee, my engineer and mixer. We've spent hours in the studio together just mixing it. Like, that was a whole cool thing in itself, like mixing. Like, how do you hear the taps? Where do they like panning it? Are we gonna my 4 chants track of acapella? Like, I had to layer it and all these things. Like, it was just super cool. It was like an amazing experience, but it took a lot of money, a lot of time. Like, I prolonged it because I had to make money. So I would be in and out of PMJ tours and then recording, and so I would save my money and invest it in this. And then I had a photo shoot for the album cover, which was like me sitting in like my memorabilia of great tap footage and masters. So it was like I wanted to show like, this is who I am. It's like, I'm a tap nerd, and then here I am sitting amongst like headshots of Harold Cromer and Bill Robinson and Count Basie, and like, here's a picture of Diane and Paul Kennedy together, and it's like a fun thing to look at, like in Zoom. Like, if you zoom in, you can like see all these cool things, and so, but it was a lot of work to do, and I had never done this before, obviously, but also I wasn't around anyone to mentor me for this either. Like, no one had really done it in my time, like since like a Baby Lawrence type thing, and even then that's a totally different vibe. But like to have someone to guide me. So it was a lot of like YouTubing how to release an album. What do I need to do? After you record the tracks, you got to get ISRC codes and all this stuff, and you need a distributor to put it on iTunes and Spotify and blah blah blah, blah, and then make an account for all that, blah blah blah, blah, and a release date and all this stuff, and then to have a cover song, how do you do that? Harry Fox agency, like all these crazy things. I'm just like, I'm learning this whole new world. But Harold Cromer always said, learn to do by doing.
Experience is the best teacher.
Fact. And that's what it was.
Yeah. Not trying to poke or pry, but was there anything that you want to talk about that was like a challenge or a hurdle other than like the learning curve of all of these things?
Oh, awkward music business things. Like splits. When you co-write a song, you have to handle how much percentage each writer gets. And so that can be challenging for some people, of like, well, I wrote more, but I'm, this song was an original, but I came up with this line, and it's like, hold on, homie. For some people, like, absolutely, but some are like, we're trying to get credit, when then it was like, no. It was just like thing like that. And at one point I had to get a lawyer, and it was like, it turned into that thing, and then I had to, I was not seeing that expense coming my way, I was like, damn, but this is what it is. or musicians that you had really good relationships with, and you write songs because you're BFFs, and then all of a sudden you have a falling out, and now they want more money, or now they want this, and now they want that, and it's like, damn it, I didn't see that coming. Yeah, no.
Yeah, and I just ask of that because I don't know. We are super close friends for years and years, but we are on the same side of a lot of things, and then we have different opinions and views and all of that as well. But I don't know. I like to highlight, not saying you don't, but the whole thing, because some people see Sarah Reich put out a music album. It must be simple to do, or
Right.
like it just I could do that.
Right.
But whether it's putting together an album, producing a show, producing a workshop, all of these things have a lot of behind the scenes, that's not all just worthy of the highlight reel.
True. 100%. We don't post that stuff.
Yeah.
We don't post the day. I mean, there's times where like I'd go home and I'd be crying, and I would video myself. It was like a video diary, and I'd be like crying about some shit that went down. And I would send it to a few people, but I'm not posting that on Instagram. But I could, to show the process. But oftentimes we don't put those things up. Yeah. But yes, nothing is easy. Everything takes hard work.
Yeah. So go on and check out New Change,
please,
the album,
and share it with a friend,
by Sarah Reich. And where can these people check out this album?
You can find it on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play. And also, I have CDs if you want to order one on my website, sarahreich.com. And I'll always sign them too. I'd like to at some point get vinyl. But yeah.
Yeah, so...
and also, I have choreography for some of them too. So Gemini Vibe has a whole combo to it, or like the head of it. It's Tapping is a whole piece in itself, and then Baking Blues. So I also have music videos for a lot of these, and then also instructional videos for the choreography of them. So that you can also find on sarahreich.com. If you go to the shop portion, they're like instructional videos on Vimeo. So yeah, check them out. So they're like intermediate to advanced level.
Yeah.
And Nico was one of the originals to learn It's Tapping. I set It's Tapping on you and Lee and Anissa Masada.
Yeah. So, we have done plenty of gigs together, and me going to Los Angeles didn't just mean me staying in her place teaching Monday night and, a tap experience and doing insanity workouts. Like, we would gig as well, and, I've always wanted to produce things, but I think that Sarah kind of beat me to that in a lot of things that I did that you produced, like performing at the Blue Whale or, Typhoon.
Did you ever have a Typhoon?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah, I was on the hit with Jason Rogers and Melinda and Max on drums and
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But we also performed It's Tapping and some of Sarah's album at UCLA's Jazz Reggae Fest, where we were sharing the bill with Snoop Dogg.
Snoop Dogg! We opened for Snoop Dogg!
The Internet, Georgia Ann Mildrew.
Yeah.
Which that was a super dope experience, in terms of, we have a trailer that's next to all of these folks, and, so...
We got a picture with Snoop Dogg.
Yeah.
When all his security was like, no more pictures. And Snoop looked at me, he said, she can have a picture. I said, let's go, guys, we're in.
Right. He's like, her, and you're like, squat.
Squat. Yeah, squat. Let's go.
Yeah. So, we've, that's what I love about tap dancing is you can perform everywhere from a jazz club, a dive bar, to UCLA, the streets, to UCLA's Jazz Reggae Fest in Chicago, the Jay Pritzker Pavilion. Like there's so many different, venues that we touch. But with this New Change material, we got to do that, and yeah, it was super fun to do. All those gigs.
That was 2014.
Yeah.
And my album came out 2018. So like I'm saying, it took 5 years from first song being born till the album out.
Yeah, people often, are just fascinated by the highlight reels and the success and, this and that. But all these things take time. And, some things happen quickly, but, there's a great example of it. You said 5 years, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that was a fun gig.
Yeah.
Jazz Reggae Fest was really fun.
For
and
sure.
then Blue Whale that same weekend. It was my birthday weekend. It was just lit. That was like one of the best weekends.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're at 2 hours and 15 minutes, and I'm just saying this because me and Sarah, we could do this all night long. But, I want to,
like, welcome to one of our phone calls. Like,
yeah, that's just
literally our
recorded.
phone calls are minimum an hour, and they'll easily be
just a little less greasy, for the public. But so I think that for I don't know the rest of our time, it would be cool to get back to. I mean, we've been talking about tap, but to get into tap festivals and that experience, because as I've said with almost every podcast that I've had, every episode, this is definitely just episode 1, so we're not going to cover everything. We're just scratching the surface right now. But tap festivals have changed so much, from when we were attendees to now us being faculty. And so I just wonder if you would share a little bit about your early experiences and how it maybe feels different to now, if at all. Well, first, do you remember like the first tap fest?
Very first tap fest I went to was in the year 2000 at Twin Cities Tap Fest in St. Paul, Minnesota. I went with the Kennedys, and Jenny Lagon was faculty, and Chester Whitmore was with us, and Van the Man was out there, and that's all I can really remember. But after that was 2001, so I did Tap City, and then after that I went back to Tap City in 2002, because that was like all I kind of knew at the time. And then 2003 is when LA Tap Fest started. Then 2004, I went back to Tap City. That's when I met Harold. And then 2005 was my first year going into St. Louis Tap Fest, where everything really changed at St. Louis. Like, St. Louis was the first time I felt like, oh. Like, at these other festivals, it was very like, class, get it, sweat, bye. Shows, like, it was cool, but I never really felt the spirit of a tap festival until I went to St. Louis Tap Fest. And that's huge credit to Professor Robert L. Reed. And the type of vibe he cultivated there. I mean, the festival was at the hotel. I think that was what the difference was. When the festival is at the hotel, major difference versus like driving to the studio and driving back, whatever. When you're in a hotel, and this is the Sheraton Clayton Hotel in St. Louis, or Clayton's St. Louis. The festivals were in the ballrooms downstairs. It was like 2 rooms for the classes, and then there was another side room with the footage room, where Robert had his device hooked up and had all day footage rolling.
Secret treasures.
Like, you would just all of a sudden be like, run to the bathroom, but you'd always peek into the footage room, like, what's going on in here? And I remember one time I was running to the bathroom and I peeked in, and who was sitting there? It was just a row of white-haired men. I'll never forget it. Like, Prince Spencer, Jimmy Sly, Harold Cromer, Arthur Duncan, Brown. Like, it was just like mad old heads. I was like, damn, I'm staying in here. And I stood in there, and I just stood behind them, and I was just watching them watch the footage. It was so cute. They were just like watching this footage, and they were watching Stormy Weather, the clip of when Lena Horne comes out, and with Bill Robinson, and they sing "I Can't Give You Anything But Love," and they have the chorus of men in their tuxedos, and they're just like, time, step, ball, and they're just like over the top, and it was just like chorus of like men in tuxedos like dancing, And they were cracking up. Like, oh shit, look at Joe. Remember Joe? He was hilarious. Like, oh, look at him messing up, blah, blah, blah. Like, it was hysterical. Like, they knew those guys personally.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, that was so cool. And then eventually, like, I made my presence known. I'm like, hey, fellas. He's like, hey, girl, what's going on? Come watch with us. I'm like, okay, you know. And then About Tap came on, and it was Jimmy, and and I remember doing Jimmy's step in front of Jimmy, and he was like, what? Like, you know this? I was like, yeah, like, I'm obsessed with this footage. Like, and he was like, how cool you know my stuff. Anyway, just to be around the masters, and Robert Reed was always about bringing the masters around. Like, that was so important to him. Whoever was still alive was at his fest. It was like, masters had priority over, like, cool teachers. It was like, it'd be like 10 masters and like
a whole different thing from now.
And then like Dormisha.
Yeah.
You know, but like that was dope. And then like teaching Opus 1. That was the first place I taught Opus 1 officially with Harold. I assisted him for the first time at St. Louis Tap Fest. And that was cool. Do you remember learning Opus from me?
I do.
Pretty much. Or did you get it at LA Tap Fest the summer before briefly? Because we did it.
I don't remember where I learned it first, but
Okay.
it was a few places that I learned.
Because you were at LA Tap Fest 04. That's when I met you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you might have learned it then.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway. Hotels.
Yeah.
Because then we became good friends. I would always go to the Mad Rhythms room because it'd be him, Star, J-Bo, Jumani, Jumani, and Lee, and Danny Nielsen, and Lisa, Brill, and Trey. Like, it was like the whole gang. And so I was like, I'm going to Mad Rhythms room, and I would hang out with them. And then, like, it would just be us wilding out.
Before social media.
Thank God there wasn't any social media. Because we were bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so fun. Like, we were just having fun. Really.
Yeah.
Like, just jumping around beds and stuff.
Yeah. Pillow fights, all
Pillow
kinds.
fights, tickle fights, like,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and that totally changes the vibe. I mean, for anybody who's tuning in past today or this week or this year, right now it is March of 2021. And we came out of a crazy year last year. So not only have TAP festivals changed, you know, from when we're talking about to, you know, past years recently, but now everything is virtual. So you can, you know, it's just, you're definitely not going to get that experience. But some festivals are in hotels and you can kind of get something like what that experience was before. And just like, you know, you're saying, just like Sarah said, is this very special thing to not just be able to be amongst your peers and meet new people from, you know, different places, to see how cool tap dancers all are, even if we're nerdy and even, you know, we're, you know, strange in our own ways, but just super cool and like very much ourselves, in a time where we were all very much ourselves. And it was cool to not just have that amongst your peers, but then walk down to when the classes aren't even happening in a room, a shed might be, a session, a cipher might be happening. And then you might get legendary tap dancers who come in and watch as well. And then the other thing too is it's not like you have to worry about people taking you when it's your time to teach. You can go down to the ballroom whenever you want to.
The doors were always unlocked.
Always unlocked. And so also during the classes, not just at night for like, you know, things that weren't planned that just popped up, but during the actual classes, you would have Harold Cromer teaching or, you know, Leonard Reed teaching, and then you'd have a panel of Jimmy Slide and, you know, just, I wasn't there when Peg Leg Bates was there, but Ernest Brownie Brown, like
Brownie.
You would just have legends just hanging around watching the classes. And that was just a whole other vibe because, you know, it's not like they would interrupt but there would be moments where it was like some engagement from them, and you know, it just gave a full encompassing experience that is very much missed.
The panel discussions I miss.
Yeah.
A lot of festivals aren't having them anymore because situations get a little heated.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
But I'm like, let's get it heated. Let's talk about it. But man, the panel discussions back then, like, we would bring our notebooks and like sit and take notes. We were kids. We were just sitting there front row, like, Mom, what are they talking about? And then we'd always have questions like, where's the future of tap dance? What are we doing? What's the plan? And like, all those discussions were really interesting because I remember a general consensus, and tell me if you remember this, Nico, of like us feeling like, where's the work? That was always a conversation of like, where's the work? Why aren't we where we want to be? Why aren't we gigging like this? Where's our presence and these things and blah, blah, blah. And it was always like this kind of frustration that we've felt as a tap community. And unfortunately, I think that mentality or just those conversations kind of stuck with me to the point where I would feel timid to go to a jazz club. And you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I feel like we had this low-key plague in our mentality of like, well, are we worthy enough for work? Or I don't know. And maybe I'm using the wrong words here, but I just remember us feeling like, when is it gonna happen? Why hasn't it happened? We were just like so underground. Like we still are, but it was even more so.
Yeah.
Back then.
Yeah, and it's also a thing where it's not just like feeling like we're off to the side amongst musicians and other entertainers. It's like if the dance world is orbiting over here, we're over there within the dance world too.
Yeah.
So
like tap dance is the bottom.
Yeah.
We've always like felt that.
Yeah. And being someone who's from Chicago, which gets labeled the second city, I kind of get it from that side where like I'll say Chicago is, in my opinion, and many others, number one city in a lot of ways. But
in what of like tap dance?
No. I don't mean in terms of tap. That's good clarification. No. I'm not saying that. I mean just like in general, food, entertainment, sports, whatever.
Oh, is New York one?
Sports is questionable. New York is usually, considered number one. And Chicago's called the second city. I don't know where they put, LA. Okay. But yeah, but I'm just saying, like, having a second city mentality, it's often the second runner-up or the one who gets no credit who has had many contributions that people just aren't willing to express or acknowledge. And tap dancers have been around as a part of so much since, this thing started. So I don't know. I'm just saying, like, we always feel like we're playing the back, but I kind of feel like some folks who are the gatekeepers or whatever, what have you, of different opportunities maybe don't want to give us that front of the stage to take attention away from something else. Because just like you said earlier, it's a thing of, people might not be paying attention if there's a jazz trio playing at a restaurant, but then a tap dancer comes up and everyone's paying attention. So just imagining how they might feel, like, yeah, that gets us more attention, but then do people care about what we're doing? Mm-hmm. We have to just bring a tap dancer in for them to care.
Sure. I mean, in any facet of even TV, like in movies, and, just tap presence, period.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to festivals.
Exactly.
They were really fun, and we would do St. Louis, Chicago, LA for like multiple summers, and we'd all, stay in the hotel in St. Louis. We'd all drive in your mom's car. Well, at least me and my dad would hop in your mom's car, and we'd drive to Chicago. We'd do the Chicago tap, and then we'd all fly to LA, and then everyone stay at my house. So like that was always really fun. Summertime was always like, woo! We're all doing the same 3 festivals. Yeah, let's get it. LA Tap Fest was lit with the cutting contest. Like, you want to talk about winning a cutting contest? If you want an LA cutting contest, then you really want a cutting contest. Reigning champion over here, Champion McGee.
Yeah, or whatever. But no, like it was a special thing to be able to go with your peers from St. Louis to Chicago to LA. It was like an extended summer camp, and it made us not just who we are as dancers, but who we are as people and who we are as friends who still all, stay connected.
I mean, last night we were hanging out, me, him, Star, and Donetta, amongst others. But like I'm like looking at us like, damn, we've been homies since like '04.
Yeah.
And I love it. And I'm like, we're still good friends, and we can talk about tap dance and other things, and we just know about each other's lives. It's like I have this whole other family, my tap family for reals. Like it's really embedded in our spirits and souls, and like the love we have for each other is so real. And it's unlike any other community I've ever seen. The closest I would say is like the swing dance community. They're dope, but then that's also like similar, like the jazz world, and it's like, well, what is that magic that we have? This bug of, this passion,
Yeah.
It's dope. It's really dope.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing like it, and I love it. Like my relationship with Harold, with Skip, with Chester, with Ivory Wheeler, with Aunt Diane. I mean, both of us, we were FaceTiming her the other day, like, just like, she's family, and she loves seeing us together. She's like, my babies, I see my babies together. Like, that is fam, but she's someone who's so well respected and adored in this community. And so we feel lucky that we're so close with her, and that she's someone that we can call on, and my relationship with Harold was like unlike any other. Just like, I'll call him about advice. I can call him to talk dirty. I can call him to talk about jazz history. I can call him to talk about John Bubbles and how much he loved John Bubbles. And just like, so cool. So cool. I've learned so much about everything from being a tap dancer, about integrity and like having respect for your art form, for yourself, and how you represent this art form, and how you share it, and how you teach it, and how you keep the names and the legacies alive as you continue to do that. So many life lessons learned, right? Just from being a tap dancer. Like, my life is so rich because I'm a tap dancer. I'm very thankful for it.
Indeed. Yeah, so before we get into our final segment, the Tap Nerd segment, the final questions.
Thanks.
Yeah. I feel like I know we're just going to scratch the surface, but I feel like it would be nice for you to speak about your relationship with Dr. Harold Cromer, who you mentioned a moment ago, because different art forms have different levels of uplifting those who came before them, or not at all. Some art forms just stay in like where we're at right now, and as tap dancers, we're constantly, or a good amount of us are, acknowledging our elders, and not just considering what they could give to us, but how we could help them, in what becomes their final years. With someone like Reggio McLaughlin, who wasn't just partners with Ernest Brownie Brown, but like took care of him. And so you have your own relationship in that way with Dr. Harold Cromer. So if you don't mind sharing what you
This
like.
greasy. Yikes. Oh, boy.
Put the kids to sleep, by the way.
I might even tell a dirty story. I'm going to tell a dirty story.
Yeah. This is the
real
platform.
Real talk. Long story short about how we met. I met him at 2004 Tap City Tap Fest. I signed up to take this old man's class. I don't know who he was. I just knew he was an old man. He's got to be a master of some sort. I'm going to take his class. And it was a week long, same schedule. So I just jump in. Andrew Nemmer is there assisting Harold Cromer in teaching Opus 1. And so all throughout that week, we all learned Opus 1. Lee Howard was in that class. Kazu Kamagai, Josette Wiggin, Michelle Dorrance, like Jay Sam would pop in and out. Like, it was cats in that class. And we learned this killer piece of choreography, 1943, Opus 1. what I'm saying? I was gonna swing. So now I knew how to swing because I came from the Kennedy School. So I knew that era. I'm like, oh, we're doing big band? I know big band. So here I am. I'm like, woo! And Harold's looking at me, and I had, as you love to say, with her pigtails and braces. I'm like, stop embarrassing me. But there I was with my pigtails and braces. And he was like looking at me, and him and Brownie would be looking at me, and he'd be like pointing at me and talking like, this girl. And I'd see him like pointing at me. I'm like, I hope I'm doing okay. And so after class, he's like, who is your teacher? I said, oh, I've studied with Paul and Arlene Kennedy. That's why. He's like, I knew you had something. He's like, I'm very good friends with the Kennedys. I used to, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, that's crazy. That's amazing. He's like, this all makes sense. So anyway, we ended up having this cool little bond. And at the end of the fest, I was like, hey, Harold, would you mind if I got your phone number? I would love to call you. Maybe every Saturday or something. Would that be okay? He's like, yeah, absolutely. He gives me his home number. 212-736-1156. That was his phone number. Sorry, I'm just putting it out there. It's probably not his number, so don't even call it. But that was his number. And I also memorized it because every time he left a voicemail, I was like, call me back. Harold Cromer. 212-736-1156. I'm like, I know your number.
Right.
New York. Like, that was like the signature.
Right. That was good.
He was from Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah.
So anyway, I called him every Saturday. We built this relationship. I start seeing him at these tap festivals. I become his assistant just because he needed an assistant. And I knew Opus One. And so I was helping him. And then we start traveling the world. And before you know it, we're just best friends. BFFs. Talk all the time. I can call him any time of day. He'll always answer the phone. And I'd be driving home from the club, 2 a.m. It's 5 a.m. in New York. Did he answer after the first ring every time? And it wasn't never like, it's a, hello? Because I know I woke him up. It was like,
right.
But his damn phone was so freaking loud.
Mm.
So I know he'd be sitting there like, ring! And he's like, hello? It was always like, hello? I'm like, hey, boo. He goes, hey, girl. And I'm like, what you doing? Oh, I'm just sleeping. All right, cool. I'm just driving home. He's like, oh, yeah, where are you driving home from? And he'll just stay up and talk. He was never like, are you crazy for calling me? Never said that, ever. Never said, are you crazy for calling me at 5 a.m.? He would just, like, wake up and be like, okay. And, like, okay, we're talking. We would just talk. And I love that about him. He just always had the time of day for me. And for anybody, honestly. Always very supportive of everyone in tap dance. He would show up to every show. He was always there. All the New Yorkers know, because I live in LA, but y'all New Yorkers know he was at every damn show. And he was supportive, and he kept every program. He was very particular about keeping program, making sure everyone got their credit, because he was a stickler for credit, because he didn't get a lot of credit. So the title of his book, which is still not out, I don't know what's going on with it, but it was called No Room at All. And he talks about even being born a twin. He's a Gemini too. But he was like, I was born a twin. Hattie, his sister Hattie. And they didn't even know, the mom didn't know she was going to have twins. So his birth name on his birth certificate is male Cromer. And hers is female Cromer. Crazy.
Wow.
Grew up, in Hell's Kitchen, tap dancing on roller skates. Got his Broadway show when he was a kid. Dewberry was a lady with Ethel Merman. Cole Porter show. And like, knew Gene Kelly really well. Like, that's where Opus One was kind of born. And became a part of this act called Stump and Stumpy from the 50s, a comedy act, or the classic short guy, tall guy act, they all had the same manager, Nat Nazzaro. They would even learn each other's acts. So at one time, he even played like Buck and Bubbles. Like, it was just crazy stories. And he was around all the big people. He was related to Miles Davis and Charlie Parker, bro. He showed, like, I have the family tree drawn out somewhere on one of my notes. But he has pictures of the Cromer-Parker family reunion. And then there's pictures of him and Miles Davis, like, what up? And I'm like, y'all are twins. They were like twins.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. Like, when I see Miles Davis play trumpet and his fingers are like this, Harold's fingers are like this.
Yeah.
Harold's fingers are always kind of, like, narrowed like this. It's crazy.
Yeah.
If you see a picture of them together, you'll be like, damn, they are cousins.
No, I could see it already in my head. Yeah.
Nuts. Anyway, so he's just got stories for days. Blah, blah, blah. So of course, I love older people. Period. I've always loved older people. It's just something about me, and like, so me befriending him was like nothing out of the ordinary for me. Like I was like, he's my homie. I never used the word mentor until after he passed away. I never even saw him as a mentor. I didn't. I just was like, you're my friend, and that's the kind of messed up part about it is like he was trying to mentor me and trying to be like, Sarah, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to sing, you got to act, you got to, and I'd be like, okay, whatever. This is my homie telling me this versus like, yes, sir, I will do that. It's interesting. Our dynamic was just homies, really.
Yeah.
But I mean, of course, I still learned so much from him, and now to this day, I'm like, well, he was really like a mentor. You know, he wouldn't let me out the house with wrinkly clothes. He's like, where are you going? Oh, I'm just going to a barbecue. Jason's having a 4th of July party. You're going in that? Yeah. I was living in his apartment. I would stay with him in New York. So I just probably pulled it out of my suitcase. You're going out like that with that skirt all wrinkly? I said, yes. No, you're not. Take it off. Take it off right now. Take it off. I'm in my panties. He's like, takes it, goes to his bedroom. He's got his ironing board. He plopped down on his bed, puts the skirt in. There I'm standing, like, just in my panties. But that was our relationship, too. Like, I didn't care.
Yeah.
I did not care. I've seen him in all kinds of draws and nastiness. I'm like, Lord Jesus. I would help him with all his stuff. We'd be in the dressing room. I'm helping him get dressed. And that's what Ted Levy always remembers. Like, Sarah, I'll never forget in China. We were in China. I was helping him get dressed.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, we're all getting dressed. I was there too. And
yeah, you were.
Sarah just comes in.
I just come in the men's dressing room like, hey, don't mind me. I'm just hiking up Harold's pants, you know.
Amazing.
You know, but like I loved him, and I knew he was old, so I'm like, let me help you out, bro. I'll help you out your shit. And you know, that's just what it was. And I mean, also shout out to Hillary Marie and Shelby Kaufman, because they were also mentees of his and very close with him, and they also helped, you know, clean him up. So anyway, all right, let's go to this dirty story. Yeah, I've never told the story publicly. Because it's so funny. So we were teaching together at the Vancouver Tap Fest. This is 2010. I'm pretty good about my dates.
Yeah, check you out.
Fact
check at home.
So we were there together to teach Opus 1 at this Tap Fest. So anyway, we were both going to fly into Vancouver. So I told Harold, I was like, hey, I called him. I was like, I just got in. I'm at the hotel room. Let me know when you're flying in so I can come see you. And he's like, okay. You know, so finally he calls me. He's like, Sarah, hey, you'll never believe it. I'm like, what? He's like, I can't walk. I said, what do you mean? He's like, I don't know. My knees are just locked up. I don't know what's going on, but I need you to run to the store and get me some cream for my knees. I'm like, okay. He's like, I can leave, the door is open. I'm in this room, 3 whatever, and the door is already like open, it's cracked open, so just come to the room when you got the stuff. I said, okay, Mama, I'll be right there. I go to this supermarket, and I go to the store, and I'm grabbing like 10 different types of ointments, whatever, Tiger Balm, whatever I can find. I'm like, I don't even know what you would need, but I'm getting all this shit. So I go, then I like creep through the door. I'm like, Homer. He's like, hey, girl. I'm like, hey, I'm here. And then I close the door. I'm like, where are you? He's like, I'm in the bathtub. I'm like, oh, okay. So I like go in the bathroom. I'm like, hey. And there he is, like sitting in the bathtub. I'm like, okay, you got to the bathroom. He's like, yeah, I got myself to the bathroom. Did you get the stuff? I'm like, yeah, I got the stuff. He's like, all right, well, help me get out of here. I'm like, okay. And so he's naked. And I'm like, all right. And he's like, give me the little towel. I'm like, okay. So I get the towel, and he's like, tries to cover his penis. And he's like, don't look. I was like, Harold, this is not the first time I've seen a black dick before. He goes,
oh my God.
He goes, just don't look, but help me get out of here. I'm like, all right, come on. So I'm like trying to lift him up, and he's trying to lift himself up, but he can't. And I can't. Like, it's just too heavy for me. I'm like, oh, I don't know how to get you out. We're just trying all these things. I'm like, And I'm panicking now because I'm like, Harold, I don't know how to get you out of here. Anyway, oh wait, really fast before that happened, I was like, Cormac, I really have to pee. And he's facing like the toilet. So he's like, well, go ahead. I'm like, this was in a time when I was wearing unitards.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
I was wearing an all black unitard with no bra on because it was like a unitard. You know, it was just what I wore on my travel days. So I'm like, all right, I gotta pee, but I'm wearing a unitard. I was like, don't look at me. He's like, so I take it off, and I'm like, and he's like, Sarah, it's not like the first time I've seen boobies before. I'm like, God damn it. So I'm like going pee like this, and then and then that's when I get him, and then he goes, don't look. I was like, it's not like the first time I've seen a black dick before. So that was like the funny like comedy contrast. So now we're laughing. I'm like, we gotta get your ass out of here, and you're too heavy, and I don't know what to do. And so I look around and I see the trash can, and so I'm like, well, maybe I can lift you up just enough to slide this trash can underneath your butt, sit you up on the trash can, and then I can lift you up again to at least sit you on the ledge of the tub. He's like, okay. I was like, this is the plan of action. So I get his ass up just enough to I slide the trash can there, and he sits on it. The plan worked. I got him on the thing. I swipe his legs around. I pick him up. I plop him on the toilet. He's still trying to cover, himself. And then he sits there. He's like, go break my boxers. Go be. I'm like, okay, hold on. And I go like put his boxers on and stuff. And then I go. I get the cream. I'm like, which one of these ointments do you want? He's like, I don't know, one of this one. Okay. So he's sitting there, and I'm like rubbing his knees, and I'm like being very careful with his knees because I'm like, I don't know what's going on. He's like, oh yeah, baby, oh yeah, just like that. I'm like, shut the hell up.
Right.
He always made everything dirty, which I love because I love being dirty too. So I'm like, oh my god, whatever. And I'm like, Harold, how did you, if you can't walk, how did you even get to the bathtub? He goes, I'll show you. And he stands up, and then like he just holds on to me, and then his feet go like this. I'm like, word, you do a little tap dance, a little crawling action. He's like, this is how I get around. Wow. Look, it works.
Wow. Oh like, my god, okay. I can see it.
That was hysterical. And then we had a wheelchair for him for the rest of the festival. And then, of course, I was rowdy with him. I was like, ah! I was like running and like pushing him. He's like, Sarah, calm down. I'm like, ah! Oh my god. Just having fun with my best friend, just like. But what was crazy is at the end of the weekend, whenever the show was, here he is backstage. Like, we did sound check and everything. Like, he was still going to perform. We did band rehearsal. I used to help him with his band rehearsals and, like, communicate to the musicians. Because he'd be talking his, like, extravagant talk, and then the musicians would just look at me like, what does he mean? I'm like, just played the chart.
He's like, and then the lions and tigers and bears come out. Wow.
Yeah, and, like, I would end up, like, by the way, what he means is do this, and when you see that, that's the cue to go into Mr. Bojangles and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And they're like, okay, thanks. His band rehearsals were way too long. But what was crazy that day, we were going to pull him out in a wheelchair, or like sit him down in a chair, and he was like, no. Right before he goes on, he heard the intro. His intro was always Rhapsody in Blue. On Broadway. And that was his walk-on music. And he heard the music, and he just stood up, and he walked on stage and did his whole freaking thing. As if, like, he wasn't injured at all. No knee problems at all.
Yeah.
Blew my mind. I'm like, look at you go, boo. Look at you go. And every time he would perform on Broadway, talk about Shirley Temple and dirty jokes, and then he'd go into Mr. Bojangles and pull out his harmonica. Wee, 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 da, da, wee, wee, and he start tapping while he's playing the harmonica. Da, 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 da. and then he'd end it like the lights were supposed to iris onto his hands.
Yeah.
Blackout. And it was like, everyone would cry every time I saw him do it. And I'd seen him do it how many freaking times? So many times. That was his thing. He always performed it. I'd cry every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've seen him do it multiple times because he did it all the time.
Yeah. I mean, the funniest time was 2006 at the LA Tap Festival. It was the year of Imagine Tap. And I don't know what happened, but he was using a lavalier, like a wireless mic. And he's doing this piece where, like, you know, you say there's not a dry eye in the theater. And somehow the mic starts falling in his shirt and then in his pants. And everyone goes from, like, crying to laughing to crying, laughing. And it was, like, one of the funniest, like, just the juxtaposition of all the emotions that you're feeling at the time was crazy. But
so funny. I mean, he was a comedian.
Yeah.
So everything was funny.
Exactly.
Everything.
Yeah. Yeah, so Sarah, you know, had a very, very special relationship with Cromer, but I'm thankful for the times that I got to have with him.
You've got plenty of time with him, too.
Yeah, like we went to Beijing, China in 2008, and after breakfast one day, for some reason everyone had to rush to rehearsal, but I don't know why I didn't. And we'd had solo moments before, but we had just a moment with just the two of us. And I wish that I took, you know, really good notes and I remembered exactly what we talked about. There's some things I do remember, and I'll keep those stories for another time. You know, to not hog the mic, but yeah, he's a very special man, and you know, I feel like, again, not to make this about me, but I've always kind of been an explicit person, you know, and a very vocal person. And so Harold Cromer always felt like my spirit animal.
Oh,
you know,
man, 100%.
Just like if I end up at an old age, you know, I just I feel like I'll have that ability to just be unapologetic like Cromer was, to just say what he felt.
Yeah.
And, you know.
That was very inspiring to be around him. Just like grumpy old man, talking shit.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
And then when you and I would go visit Bunny Briggs, I would put them on the phone together, and they'd be like, "Bliki bli mutafarika." I'm like, "What is this?" And I'm like, "Cromer, what the hell was that?" He was like, "Oh, we have our own language." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Me and Bunny, we were our own language." I call him Bunty Briazig. I'm like, dang. And he's like, "We have like code words. Kiozart. Bidi." I know what these words are, and I can't tell it on the
air. But yeah. So you hosted
Mutafarika. You can get what you can guess what that
figure that out. This summer you hosted an event in honor of Cromer
for his birthday.
For his birthday, yeah. And so, real quick, how was that to host an all ages event?
It was terrible because none of us could really tell the real deal stories. We were all being on our best behavior, and Michelle Dorrance was the first to call it out because we're all just like, Harold was amazing, he did this, and he did that, la 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 la, which was all very true, and he did amazing things. So of course we had to celebrate all of that. And I co-produced it with his great granddaughter Chelsea. We're good friends. But then, like, at one point, Michelle Dorrance, like, unmute, she's like, "I'm laughing out loud at how no one's, like, saying anything about how dirty he was." I'm like, "I know, Michelle, we're all on our best behavior right now. I can't tell any of my stories because there's kids here." Like, there's, like, no stories to tell without anything being, like, R-rated.
Right. So do you think there'll ever be a time?
We wanted to. We talked about it at the end. Like, we need to do another one where we just screw it and just say it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, he was bad. But so good.
Yeah, but so good. Oh my God, at the same time. Yeah, rest in peace, Harold, for real.
Man, he ain't resting no kind of peace. He's bothering me all the damn time. So really fast. He used to never tell anyone his age. That was his thing. Like, no one knew how old he was. To this day, I still never knew what year he was born. His census, in different years was a different born year.
Mm-hmm.
His passport was different from his census, from his ID. From, like, it was just like, what the hell year were you born?
Right.
He didn't even know. So when you asked him, right? So here's how he would set it up, right? So people would always ask him, "Hey Harold, how old are you?" I never tell anyone my age. I don't do it. Damn. So I remember this Tapology. You were there. 2008 in Flint, Michigan. He's being awarded. He's being honored. And so we're all sitting there, and it's like this banquet place. Remember him? He was on that podium, and he's talking, and he's giving this gorgeous speech, and he's, preaching about the world, and you're just like, wow, look at this man, he's amazing. And he goes, this has been such a beautiful evening. You all have been so sweet and kind. Oftentimes people ask me my age. I never tell anyone my age, but I don't know what it is about today. I just feel like I really want to tell you all how old I am. And we're all just like on the edge of our seat, like, really? And he's like, I'm 47. And everyone's like, 47. But the way he set it up was so classic. And we're just like laughing our asses off. And then from then on, it was always 47. How old are you, Cromer? I'm 47. Mm-hmm. And so since he passed away, I've always associated the number 47 with Harold. And I'll use it as a reminder, or either like to feel his spirit. Like sometimes I'll just be like, hey, what time is it? Actually, so funny. It happened the other day. Sarah, what time is it? I check. Boom, 3:47. Whenever it's something 47, I know it's Harold. I just know it. And because it always happens in times when I need him too. Like I need to feel him, or whatever. His spirit guiding me. So this one day, I'd recently shot a tribute to Harold for Flint this past year's Tap Fest. And I did a tribute to Harold. They asked me to do a tribute, and I did my own version. I rewrote the lyrics to Mr. Bojangles, and I sang because I knew Harold wanted me to, and I played the piano like he always wanted me to. And anyway, day of the video shoot, I'm getting ready to go. I had already packed all my bags the night before. I'm like, okay, my costumes here, my tap shoes are packed, my this, my that, my makeup packed. So I was just like in my bedroom, and I was just like making sure I was going down my like checklist of like, okay, I have this, okay, I think I'm ready to go. So before I go, I go grab my glass of water. I'm like, let me just finish some of my water. And I'm drinking it fine. I'm in no rush. I drink my water, and somehow I choke. And I went, and I spit out my water. And I was like, what the hell? It was so abrupt, and like I didn't see it coming. And I was like, this was really weird. I'm like, damn it. I had to put all my bags down, go get a little towel, and like cleaning the floor. And finally, by the time I was done, I look up. It was 8:47. And I just had to laugh. I was like, you motherfucker. You made that happen because I had one or two more minutes that I needed to wait to just for you to let me know that you're with me today as I honor you today. And that was all I needed. And I just laughed. And it's moments like that where I'm just like, when I look at my phone or I look at the clock and I'm like, what's going on in my life? And then it's just like him just like making me laugh. And that's what I mean, like his spirit. Like when we saw Reggio yesterday, I said, how's Brownie doing?
Yeah.
He goes, man, he's dead.
Right.
I was like, nah, but how's his spirit? Does his spirit come in and check on you or something? I just think that's really important to like keep them alive. Even if it's your own made up way. My made up way was like, okay, when I see 47, that'll be it. And maybe he knows that and is coming in because I feel it 100%. It's his crazy ass hanging out with me again, still, all the time. And I love you, Harold, and I feel you, man. I feel you, baby. And I thank you, and I love you. And I'm like, and then every day, every time it's June 8th, his death anniversary, it's a problem. I'm always a mess. I cry. Like, I'll leave that whole day open because I'm just a mess. And it's hard. That's the hardest day of the year for me. It's like his passing day. Yeah, man.
So I keep my phone on that day.
You do?
Yeah. I mean, my phone's always on, but I'm just saying.
But like for me, did I call you on?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a mess on June 8th.
Yeah. But she's a star, otherwise. But yeah. Rest in peace, Harold Cromer. We miss you every day.
Yes, sir.
But we are going to go ahead and wrap it up with our final segment. So thank you to everyone who's been tuning in.
There's been so many damn final segments. What you mean?
Oh no! We haven't even gotten to it yet.
I thought Harold was the final segment.
No.
Yikes.
No.
What else?
Right. Upstairs, there you go. All right,
what
guys.
Else you want? Just kidding.
No, so we have the Tap Nerd segment, which is a some questions that are to better let people know you as a tap dancer.
Okay.
Yeah, so I used to do it like it was a speed round thing, but now you can't rush these questions.
Yes.
And I just give a disclaimer at the beginning that they're all difficult questions and they might change between today, tomorrow, next week, next year. She's a Gemini, so they might change in the next hour. Of that Gemini vibe.
Oh, Lord.
But yeah, so the first question is, who would you say right now are your favorites, your top 5 favorite tap dancers?
That are alive today?
Yeah, that are alive. 3 to 5.
3 to 5. Nico Rubio.
Plain.
True. We jammed yesterday. I'm like, God damn it. Enrique Rosario is one of my students. I'm just very proud of him. He's dancing so damn good. Dormisha, of course. Aunt Diane. And Jeannie Hill.
All right.
You used to make fun of me for loving Jeannie Hill.
Yeah.
When we took her class at St. Louis Tap, you're like, you would love Jeannie Hill because she's crazy just like you.
I said nothing. By the way, shout out to everyone who's tuning in. I just asked in the chat where folks are tuning in from. We have some DC. We have London tuned in at 2 a.m.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Annette.
Yeah, Annette.
Hi. Is Lisa Latour still here?
I imagine so. Yeah.
Hi, Lisa.
Yeah, once things got juicy, I'm looking at the numbers. They go up and down, people tuning in. But once it got juicy, it stayed. It started increasing. People probably texting like, Sarah's talking some real shit right now. On the Real Talk Tap Talk.
Hey.
Yeah, heard it here first.
Hey.
But so next question. Those are solid and very Sarah Reich. Who would you say are your top 5 who are no longer with us?
Jimmy Slide, Baby Lawrence, Chance Taylor, Bubbles, and I'll just say Paul Kennedy.
Yeah, solid. Yes. Yeah, so a little off of tap, kind of. Oh, what's up, Mama Reich?
Malena.
Yeah.
She's just like, send me your day ending.
Love
you, Lisa.
Yeah. Well, I asked where folks are tuning in from. Just curious. Don't mind us, folks. But yeah, so next question would be, who is a musician that you feel like you've danced to like a lot? Not the most, but like who's somebody that's like either been a go-to or is a go-to for you now?
Like to tap along
to tap dance to, yeah.
As a track.
As a track.
Probably Oscar Peterson, Errol Garner, and maybe like a big band joint, maybe like a Tommy Dorsey. I've just always been a Dorsey fan. And Count Basie.
Yeah. I was like, Dorsey, no Basie.
Okay. Basie.
All right.
100%.
Yeah. Okay, fresh. Who would you collaborate with who's a living musician?
I told you to put this on your questionnaires.
She's responsible for everything great I've ever done in my life, folks.
Wait, what's the question again?
Yeah, right. I told you to say this question. I can't remember. Who is a musician that's still with us that you would love to collaborate
man,
with?
had you asked me this when I was telling you to ask Cass, it would have been Chick Corea, man. May he rest in peace. Herbie Hancock. Bobby McFerrin. Those are like my 2 like woo babies. If that were to happen, that would be the day.
Yeah, solid.
So holla, Herbie
Mm-hmm. I'll be her assistant for the day that day, as usual. So, what's your favorite tap shoe at the moment?
Pizio K360s.
Mm.
And Casimiro. They're the ones who make my high heels. They're based in Barcelona.
Yeah. So this isn't a Cromer question, folks. This is like tap dancers we tap on wood. But what's your favorite wood?
Ooh. Let me think of like my favorite floor. Okay,
Yeah.
Luthier in Barcelona. That floor is nice.
Yeah.
In Barcelona, the school that Guillem Alonso runs, that floor is pretty. And it sounds so good.
Like the main floor in the room that
expands.
expands.
It's the same floor they have in all their studios. It's just somehow loud and clear and tone, and it's pretty.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
That's probably my favorite floor. I'm trying to think of another good floor. Man. You know, because there's like studios that have good floors. I don't know, good maple floor. I don't know.
Yeah, nice. So, right, peeking through the chat. So yes, that's a good place, but for another place other than there, where would you say has been one
the floor at the Kennedys. The downstairs floor. That was a great floor. Goddamn, that was a good floor.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna ask, where has been your favorite place that you performed, taught, choreographed, just shedded, like in the world? If there's been a place or an ambiance or something that you feel like you were at your best.
Barcelona.
Yeah.
Barcelona. Like, it's just, the scene there is the best. The people are super cool. They're ready to learn. If we're sweating, it's hot. And then just the vibe in Spain. It's Spain. So you go out and you get a little coffee in the cafe, and you're sitting outside, and it's cute little chairs, and you're out there and you're having drinks with the tap fam, and you have your little, brunch, and then you go back in and you drench yourself in sweat. The Tap Fest there was so good. And they're no longer doing it now. Tap on Barcelona, but was one of my favorite tap festivals.
That's a hell of a cosign. You said the best scene
in Europe.
Word, nice. So we just have a few more left. If you had to choose one piece of footage that's your favorite, whether it's like a single
Mr. BB, he's the man who knows. Mr. BB.
Finish my question.
Since you've been gone, every suit's gone. Now here's what you can do. Bring the Easter parade to Lenox Avenue. Bye, sha-da-da-da-da. Hey-da-da-do, ka-ka-ka. Shake it together. Harold Nicholas and Mr. BB. Lord.
Mr. BB is pretty fire.
And the Four Step Brothers come out, and then Marie Bryant comes out, and she winds it up and goes, pow!
How'd that go?
One, she go, boom, boom. She look back at it, and then she go, and she just like pop her booty back at this guy's like, duh. It's the best. That's my favorite clip. That one and Tip Tap and Toe. Shout, brother, shout.
Yeah, part of my
You'll soon find out. You will be happy if you shout, brother, shout. Hey! Yep. When they would finish each other's phrases. Woo!
Yeah, come in on the 6th.
Yikes.
Yeah. Okay. I could vibe with
I'm
that.
ready for those.
Yeah.
What's one of yours?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, Zayn Musa, that clip. When Lisa asked me this, I told her, on the podcast recently that her and one of her Zoom hangs during, pandemic time, she was playing clips, and she's like, "What's your favorite clip?" And I was like, "Favorite? Oh my God." I mean, I would go for a documentary, like about tap.
About tap,
no
100%.
maps on my taps.
Like, I would have said that first.
Yeah. But if I finished the question and told you,
My bad.
But no. Like, those are solid. And what I told her that day was Jimmy Slide doing in the documentary called Bird, he was doing. Oh, why can't I remember the name of the song? The Charlie Parker tune, but it's the one where all the mirrors are disappearing.
Oh, that. Oh, yeah, that's
yeah.
dope. Oh yeah, what song was that? Was that Yardbird Suite?
Yardbird Suite.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like my favorite piece of footage is either About Tap or No Maps on My Taps.
Well, dirt.
Yeah.
What do we say? We should do a. Nico and I always battle on who knows About Tap, who has it memorized the most.
We have many a battle. And maybe we'll make some of them public one day.
Listen, I know it better. Let's just say.
She's a star. Let her think what she thinks. Live in the stars up there. Yeah, so if you could hang out with one tap dancer for a day, dancing, talking, doing anything, someone who's no longer here, who would you choose?
Leonard Reed. Yeah.
That's real.
Yikes. Like, imagine. It would just be a long ass interview.
Right.
But he's just been through so much and knew so many people and like did so much and he's such a producer too. Like, I would love to pick his brain some more.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thankful we got to meet him. I mean, you got to meet him too.
Right.
LA Tap Fest. Like, he was around. Like, I went to his funeral.
St. Louis too. Yeah.
Yeah. But man, I wish I would have had more time with him.
For real. Yeah, that's solid. 2 more questions. What is something an elder tap dancer told you, shared with you, that has stuck with you?
Jimmy Slide always said, enjoy the journey. And I love that, just the fact of it being a journey. It's all a journey. And then Harold isms are learn to do by doing. Grow, which stands for go right on working. He said. And the more you do, the more you can do. Harold also used to say. So, like, make sure you're well-rounded and singing, dancing, acting, playing an instrument, doing this, doing that. The more you do, the more you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I live by those words all the time.
Yeah. All right. So our last question.
No, I won't marry you, and don't ask me again.
Oh, damn it. Didn't even have to drop to my knee, at least this time.
That was another Harold one.
That's amazing. What would you like for people to remember you for, or remember about you as a tap dancer or a person when it's all said and done?
Whoa.
Yeah.
That I love this art form with all of my heart and all of the purest intentions. That I have been someone to have vision and want to, and have contributed to the growth of the art form, whether in sharing it, expanding it, sharing it with general public people versus, and as well as students. I'd like to continue to be a vessel for my teachers, such as Harold, Paul Kennedy, and those who are still alive, but those who have passed on, and how I, keep their spirits and legacies alive through myself and through the next future generations. I'd like to be remembered by I guess my music, my sound. I think that's a really beautiful thing, and that's kind of why I did this album. Was like I feel like I'm scratching the surface of like finding who my voice is, what my voice is now, and it's only gonna keep developing. And I think that's really cool, and I want to keep working on that always. And just my spirit, how I love people, I love tap dancers, I love everyone, and I want to continue loving everyone, and sharing that love as I've been given so much love. So I'll say that.
Yeah. It's supposed to be a one-word answer, but
Wait, what?
I'm just joking.
Oh.
I'm just playing. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us, folks at home. Give a warm round of applause for Miss Sarah Reich. But
Thank you.
before we get out of here, where can people...
We're now to the final segment.
Yes, we're now to the final segment of social medias and things. What are you working on now, briefly, and like where can people find you? And you know.
So I'm working on. I have a video I'm releasing tomorrow, Covered in Tap series. It's a tune. I'll spill the beans now. It's a tune called Georgie Porgy. It's by Toto. It's one of my favorite songs. It's killer. You know the song. You might be like, Georgie Porgy, what song is that? You've heard it before.
For sure. If you've been in her car, definitely.
And so it's a series I've started, Covered in Taps, where I'm doing covers of songs, but with taps. And I have two of my students in it, Enrique Rosario and Nina Maxwell. We shot it in Minneapolis with killer musicians out there. So I'm still producing some videos with that. But I'm also working on a very, very big project. I don't want to spill the beans right now because I just don't want to do that. Yeah. But it's a dream project. It's something that I think will be extremely rewarding down the line for tap dance, for showcasing tap dance. And I'll just say this, exposing it to the Latino community. And that's where I'm headed right now. So I'm working on things I've never done before. But like Harold said, learn to do by doing. So I'm learning about writing and all this stuff. So like I'm just like, ooh, like, you know, I'm collaborating with a good friend of mine, Kai Martinez, and she's a dancer and a director, and so we're working on something together, and I'm very excited about it. So I'll be slowly leaking some stuff, but it's a very huge endeavor, and I'm like, I see the amount of work, but I'm also like, let's go, rock it all. So I'm excited.
So where can people follow you to find this and all of your things?
At Sour Taps on Instagram, at Tap Music Project on Instagram, Sarah Reich, REICH.com. That's Sarah with an H. Yeah, man.
Yeah. Yes. Well, check her out. Thank you all for tuning in. This was our 17th episode.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So more to come. And this was super special for me to do this with, you know, one of my greatest friends of all time. But
I'm just tell the world I'm your best.
What she said. But we've been doing these podcasts on Zoom, and I was cringing at the thought of doing them that way, because there's nothing like when you're in person with somebody having, you know, a conversation, especially when we have rapport like we do, and we don't have to worry about being on Zoom and like starting to talk at the same time and connection issues and everything. So this, you know, the first couple episodes were in person with people, and that was almost a year ago now. So, you know, a whole year later to finally, you know, now that people are able to get tested and make sure that we're safe, it was a real treat to do this today. So I just want to say thank you again to Sarah from me.
I love you.
Yeah, and I love you too. And we love you as well. And we will catch you soon. Thank you all very much for tuning in to the Real Talk Tap Talks.